Good evening and welcome to the final show of Gin and Tonic for 2018 on this Friday, the 28th of December. Good evening to my co-host. As always, stop spamming.
Hey, good evening. Hello, hello, hello.
Hope you are well, my good sir. Let me just mute that. There we go. That sounds better. How are you keeping? How's been your festive season?
Not so festive. We're not big celebrators on Christmas. It's family, you just get together, and everybody respects actually that there are different levels of belief in different things. And that's why we don't really go into this, because they know that if they start on this, they're going to lose, so they don't even do anything.
Indeed. Welcome to everybody who's viewing or who will view this, everybody in the chat and those who are watching us online from wherever you may be in the world. So we thought what we'd do is just have a look back at the shows. We may not get through all of them. We may get through all of them. Who knows? We'll see. And just look back and comment on some of the shows we've done over 2018, see if they're still relevant, and have we got any new information or anything like that.
That's like 50 shows, isn't it?
I know. That's why I say we may not get through all of them. Some of them have got guests, so we don't have to necessarily say as much.
If you're ambitious. Okay.
So, as I say, we'll see where we can get to. Let me share my screen here. And where are we? There we go. Present to everybody. Cool. Good evening. And if somebody else wants to join us, then let us know. And obviously you guys can join us if you want to have a conversation again. If you are a Muslim and wanted to, I've just asked somebody in a private chat if they'd like to join us. I haven't had a response yet, so we'll see whether anything comes of that. So with that said, let's start with, hang on a second. Let me just close something here. Apologies. That might screw things up. There we go. That's a bit better. Right. Let's start with, so we started the year with, I think it was this one. That was 2000. When I had a look, that was 2017. So this was the first show here, the welcome to the show format, etc. And then we really started with the proper show, which was Muslim censorship. And this one here was.
Oh, is that what happened? Okay.
And the use of the word hate with a surprise guest. Now, I actually don't remember who the surprise guest was. I think you told me to put that in, but I can't remember who it was. So we're going back, quite a distance to that particular show. But just in general, what's been your thought? I mean, to me, of course, nothing has changed. Presumably got a little bit worse with censorship and the word hate. And that's being used more. And I think we saw recently, didn't we, with Imran Khan trying to, or threatening to, or claiming that he's going to bring some kind of motion to the UN to see if they can get a sort of a version of blasphemy law installed or agreed upon in the UN. So I made a hang for you, Rob. Oh, okay. Thanks, Qur'an. Just chatting to somebody else. So your thoughts, has it got any better or worse stops with Muslim censorship and the word hate?
I would say worse.
Yeah, I mean, to me the same. I don't think it's got any better. And whenever I speak to people, I'm still trying to explain to people why hate is a subjective thing and it's a choice. And a better world would be people who don't claim that there's hateful language, because it's anti-free speech, of course. And I think that was the whole point of doing that show, was to view and talk about how in Islamic countries and so forth, the use of the word hate is brought about, and how it stifles free speech. And I think I
still don't understand this.
Yeah, well, I mean, for you and I that value free speech, it is somewhat incomprehensible. And especially, I think the fact that that some Muslims claim that Muhammad is as dear to them or more dear to them than their family members. This, to me, is utterly incomprehensible, should I say. Especially somebody you've never met, that may or may not have lived 1400 years ago. I can understand that you follow somebody and you think they're great and important, but to feel insulted or offended on their behalf when they died 1400 years ago is just utterly incomprehensible.
And plus, how am I supposed to know about this? How am I supposed to know that there's some bloke in Yemen who thinks like this? And if I do something here, where I'm in a country where I don't have any restrictions, where I am allowed to do things like that, where nothing is going to stop me, and then some idiot in Yemen feels offended or has his feelings hurt because I'm doing something here, how the hell should I know? And then he comes and complains about me doing something. And then the funny thing is, a company in the US then blocks me because I'm saying something that I'm perfectly entitled to, and some guy in Yemen feels offended. That's crazy. That's totally crazy.
Yes, and again, the irony, I guess, in some ways, is that this guy in Yemen is using, the technology of the West to go online and, to choose to feel offended about this. Of course, he could, if in fact he did go online, or he wasn't just told, or whatever the case is, he could just as well ignore it. Obviously, thinking that far ahead is a little bit challenging for some people.
And just to put this even further, the worst is that people get offended when I am saying things which Islamic scholars have deemed to be authentic. So I am quoting things that are in the Hadith, for example, because they are the ones that make Islam this terrible ideology. So I'm quoting Sahih Hadiths. Okay, this is a text which has been, inspected by scholars of Islam, and they said, yes, this is authentic. But when I am quoting it, I am being told that I am using hate speech, and I need to be stopped for quoting something that they deem authentic. That to me, that is crazy.
Yes, indeed. Good evening, Thunderous.
Hi. I was just thinking there about what you guys are saying, and isn't it a case of when you are quoting a scholar with reference to Islamic sources, it's a question of where you live and the interpretation of that scholar, and whether he's an authentic scholar or a real scholar or not. It seems Islam is adaptable to the demographics of where it's being offended at any one given time. So it's adaptable. That is to say, you talk about a guy in, is it Yemen, was offended, and your comment was, how was you to know he was going to be offended? And my instant reaction stops was, why are you to care if he's offended or not?
Exactly. And why should a company in the States?
Why should you care? Pretty much at the end of the day, the way things are going, you can offend somebody by saying hello because it's a contravention of their internal or private. Let's say you're walking down the road and you say hello to someone. You could offend somebody by saying that because you're disturbing them. Where do you draw the line with this?
Well, the easiest example, the best example in my eyes, is if you're using hand signals. Like in countries that I normally frequent, a thumbs up is something great. You give a person a thumbs up, which is, yes, super. But if you are in Iran, for example, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the thumbs up is actually bilagh, and bilagh this is like fuck you. So the hand signal of thumbs up is an insult in a different country, whereas in the rest of the world, it's actually a positive thing. So, this I think is the best example possible, because who knows that there is a country on this planet where something that is usually deemed to be possible is the most negative thing that you can think of. And that's crazy. This is how crazy it is. How are you supposed to know?
But then when it goes back to what's been said time and again, truth has become a hate speech. So when you're quoting Islamic sources, and you're the one quoting it, and yet you're the one being offensive. It's not the person who wrote the text down. It's not the religion that identifies itself with it. It's not even the people who promote it. It's you that's quoting it. You're the offensive guy.
Isn't that
the mind boggles. There's a cognitive dissonance taking place there that is beyond comparison, isn't there?
And the funny thing is, I am being told I am immoral. I have no base for my morality. And yet they go and they say, well, you can have sex with your slaves. You can rape them as much as you want to, even if they're married. And this is according to the Qur'an. Now, and they chastise me for not having a base for my morality. And they have this. Come on, please.
Yeah, it's
okay,
the idea behind it.
First, I mean, if we spend this much time on all 50 shows, we're going to have a problem. So we need to run along, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we might have a guest coming on. I've invited a Muslim lady, so we'll see whether she can.
Oh, this is a reasonable one. Okay, this is not the stupid Sia girl, but I think Rose is actually. I mean, she's also deluded. Please, but at least you can talk to her.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Buddha and Rose, and they can join us in a moment. So we'll see how far we get with this. It might be that we sort of go off on a tangent. So it's kind of a review. There we go. I've passed those links on. So the next one, and they'll join us in a moment, I'm sure. The next show was guests. So we had Abdullah Gondol and Abdullah Samir. So those guys joined us in January 2018, and that was an excellent show. For those who didn't see that, please go watch it. Both ex-Muslims, both very intelligent guys, and all said the sort of same thing. January 2018, and that was an excellent show. For that. Somehow I can hear myself here now. I'm not sure why that is. So yeah, that was a really good show with those two guys. So if you haven't, go and look them both up. I think they're both on the internet as well. And we had a good conversation with them. We're always interested in having both Muslims and ex-Muslims on. And with that, I want to welcome in Rose. So Rose is somebody that I've chatted to in private hangouts. Rose is a Muslim. I believe she's a Sunni Muslim. Good evening, Rose. How are you?
Good evening, Rob. How are you? I'm well.
I'm good, thank you. And I also want to welcome in Why So Religious. So you are in here with 4 critics of Islam, Rose, but you're used to that. You do private hangouts anyway. We chatted earlier today, and I have got some of my colleagues here who are more knowledgeable in certain aspects of the Quran. So perhaps we can get to that in certain ways. And also welcoming Buddha. So Buddha is more sort of spiritual, sort of along the Buddha line, follows the Buddha, which is why the name. Good evening, Buddha. How are you doing? Okay, so perhaps you'll. There you go. So the idea of the show is a review of 2018, but we've got you guys in here, so you're more than welcome. We'll see where it goes. It's kind of open. We'll see how we do. We're going through some of the shows that we did of 2018 with some comments, and obviously, Rose, you're here, so you can comment from a Muslim point of view and give us a few thoughts here as well. So we had those 2 ex-Muslims on, and then we had a very interesting show after that, which was this one, which was circumcision in Islam. And I think here we went through the rules, and I've still got that somewhere as well, and I might even be able to, if I bring it up here. We did some comments first. I'm just looking here. And then we went through some of the reasons why we think it's bad. And also, I think if I remember, this document also had reasons, and it pointed in the Quran as well to why circumcision is either pointed to, I can't remember specifically whether it's pointed to in the Quran or not, or why it shouldn't be. I think they were making the argument, if I remember, that in fact one shouldn't use circumcision. Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, sure.
And then we had these horrible pictures here. So
circumcision is not mentioned in the Quran; it's mentioned in the Hadith.
Okay, yes. Well, speaking of which, Rose is on here, and we had a conversation earlier, and maybe she can articulate her position, because it sounded like she felt like the hadiths were not reliable enough. So, and I spoke to you about this, so it's good that she's on here. She pointed to the covenants that Muhammad supposedly made and the Quran, and so I don't want to misrepresent her. So Rose, perhaps you can comment and say whether I'm accurately representing you. She was questioning whether even Sahih hadiths should be taken as fact. Is that correct, Rose? So you're more, if as long as they follow the Quran, you're okay. Obviously, the Quran is your authority, and then these covenants that Muhammad, you believe, made, and that should be followed together with the Quran. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I think that any hadith which contradicts evidence or the Quran itself or the covenants should be regarded as fabrication.
Oh, okay.
Well, now that leads into a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Because we could start out hadith by hadith, and figure out which ones it is that you say contradicts, because the vast majority of Muslims are going to say if it's Sahih, in Sunnah Abu Dawood or Bukhari or Tamri, all these books, that is official, right? So even though they don't see, like I was discussing this last night with a Muslim. Okay, this is my question to you, Rose. Do you believe that Muhammad saying to stone adulterers goes against the Quran?
Well, the Quran doesn't have that, law in there, so it's not a law of God.
But the thing is, does it go against the Quran?
I was talking with Rob earlier about this. So people legislate laws, and it's man-made laws, so long as they don't contradict the Quran. So the Quran doesn't have anything in there that says stone or do not stone.
But it does mention. So you support the Hadith. You say that it's an authentic Hadith, and you think that if Muhammad said stone adulterers, then that is the punishment.
Well, let's keep this conversation objective as possible. Let's not
that is objective.
Let's not delve into what we think is right or wrong. Let's go. Let's incline towards truth together. So if you want to understand God's law, you'll do the research.
But if it's your perception, I have to know what your belief is, right? If you're trying to separate certain hadiths, saying that they allegedly contradict, so you don't follow them, I have to know which ones that you think contradict. And the reason I'm speaking about this is because, 13 Muslim countries believe in stoning for adultery, yet it comes from a Sahih hadith where Muhammad said to do it. Now, when people asked him what to do with an adulterer, why didn't Muhammad recite the Quran? Because the Quran says to either exile, to house arrest, or publicly flog. But yet Muslims toss out that Allah's law and punishment and replace it with Muhammad's. That's the reason I wanted to ask you if you believe, before I mention my case, if you believe that you should follow Muhammad saying stone.
Battery is low. Please recharge in time.
Somebody's battery is going to die. I don't know whose that is.
But Rose, do you understand why I'm asking that? Because if you're saying that there are ones that contradict the Quran, so they shouldn't be followed, I led out by asking what you believed of this certain hadith, and then that way we can determine if it's a contradiction or not.
Here's my assertion: anything that contradicts the Quran or the covenants of the Prophet, I do not accept them.
So then the one I just asked you about.
Be mindful that I have not read all the hadiths. So I'm not like, you can't ask me about them right now. What I'm making is an objective claim. Anything that contradicts that, I will not accept it, even before reading them.
So the one that I just gave, does that contradict?
I have not read that one. So
well, you don't have to read it, because there's 13 countries in the world that use this hadith to support stoning. So these are all Islamic countries. So you don't have to take my word for it, right?
I think why so? I think that what she's saying is, hey, if it contradicts the Quran, which is what you're saying it is, then she's not going to accept that hadith. So only the hadiths that do not contradict the Quran is what she's going to accept.
Yes, but that's the question. Does she believe that stoning, which is prominent in the Muslim world, contradicts the Quran? And her point was, well, it's not in the Quran if it's okay to stone or not. But what I did was bring up a time that Muhammad was asked about adulterers, and instead of reciting the Quran, he gave his own opinion, which puts him above Allah.
Yeah, but Rose is going to say that. Yeah, but Rose is going to say, well, hey, that hadith may not be authentic. She's not going to accept the hadith. That's what I'm saying.
You need to put it into a straight question.
That my straight question is this: is stoning permissible when Allah already gave the punishment for adultery?
There you go.
What's your thought on that, Rose? She's muted there. Rose, you need to unmute when you're ready.
I don't think there's an answer to this.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Hello?
I'm looking into that right now. Just give me a second.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no worries. Okay, you do that. We'll continue in the meantime. So we'll hold that question then. Do you think that stoning is permissible when there's already been punishments mandated in the Quran? I think I know what you'll say, but let's wait and see.
Now, while she's looking, I'll just show some of these hadiths, right? Atabli, right? Here's one. This is Sahih, where it says that Muhammad stoned Jew and a Jewess. Okay, maybe you want to know what the this backstory is, but to me, that's
before let's not go to the backstory. It'll be too long to do that.
Yeah, that's why I was actually going to say that's not important. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about stoning in general, because Allah gave punishments for various crimes against his deen, right?
Yeah, but just wait here, because this is the problem. If you go up a little bit, you see that the hadiths themselves contradict themselves internally as well. This is the problem.
Yeah, so I think Rose is going to feel like she's in a firm position to say, hey, I reject these hadiths. If they don't go with the Quran is my rule of thumb. If it disagrees with that, then I don't accept the hadiths.
And you can, yeah, perfectly valid, absolutely. But then you need to be consistent.
That's my point. Then it seems to me you have to reject all of the hadiths, because if they're sahih, you either accept sahih or you don't. And if you don't, you're going to have to give good reasons why you're not accepting those sahih ones, but you are accepting these sahih ones. And that's going to be very difficult to do.
And this is something that we went in a later show, where we went and looked at the difference between a Quranist and a Sunni, for example, where the Quranist will say, well, only 3 prayers are specified in the Quran, so I only pray 3 times. Alcohol is not prohibited. It's only deemed something that you should avoid if you feel like it. So they drink alcohol. The hijab or the niqab, burqa, and the covering of women is not mandated in the Quran. So a Quranist will not do that. So the consequence is quite significant if you are going to go only by the Quran without the hadiths. So you have a choice there. But you can't say, well, I'm taking 2 or 3 hadiths which I like, and I'm going to make them halal and the others haram, and the ones that I don't like I will reject and say these are haram and the other one. So, you know, then you are creating your own Islam.
Yeah, so you either got to go Quran only, or you've got to go Quran and hadiths, right? You can't go Quran and some hadiths. Somebody in the chat is mentioning that Muslims pray and fast and perform Hajj by following the hadith.
Exactly.
So maybe that's even more valid than Rose. If you believe that the Hajj is mandatory for Muslims and is mandated in the hadith, what's your view on that?
Well, it's also in the Quran as well. So with the hadiths, what they do is further explain what can't be understood within the Quran. So a lot of people find things ambiguous, and then, you know, they need the scholars or they need clarification, which sometimes they'll rely on the hadith.
Yeah, but this is waffling.
Well, I mean, it goes to the same point we've always talked about, isn't it? I mean, God could, in his infinite wisdom, have put this very clearly in the Quran so you don't require the hadiths. And for some reason, I'm yet to have an explanation from any Muslim ever about why that wasn't the case. In other words, why was everything that's in the hadiths that was good and complements the Quran not explicitly said in the Quran? So the Quran is virtually like an expanded version, Quran, 2.0, which included the hadiths. Why was this not done by God? And I've never had a satisfactory explanation for that.
So is there an answer, or is it still coming?
So, Rose, what do you do then? Do you accept some hadiths? Do you reject them all and just go with the Quran?
I accept some. So my position is, so long as they're not contradicting the covenants and the Quran, I wouldn't reject them.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
But there was a very specific example, and I still haven't heard an answer.
Okay, so in the Quran, I just went through some passages. I found one which kind of, makes me question that hadith. This is chapter 24, verse 3. So it says, "Let no man guilty of adultery or fornication marry but a woman similarly guilty, or an unbeliever, nor let any but such a man or an unbeliever marry such a woman. To the believers, such a thing is forbidden." So my question is, if that hadith is authentic, why is it here saying, let no man of adultery or fornication marry but a similar person, if they are, to be stoned to death. So that's a question I'm posing in response to that hadith.
Exactly.
May I ask my question, please?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
The question I want to ask, Rose, if you don't mind, Muhammad said in a hadith that women are deficient in their intelligence. He qualifies that by saying that's why it takes two women to be a witness in comparison to one man's witness in a testimony. So would you agree with the hadith? Because it seems to confirm the Quran that women are intellectually inferior to a man.
I think that hadith, it states the reasons behind that deficiency. So I think the term that they use in English is kind of, you know, they shouldn't have used deficient, right? So
Okay.
what that hadith in particular is saying is that when a woman goes through her menses, she doesn't do her prayers, or she doesn't fast. It's a stuff of that nature, and she's also not legally obliged. Because I read into this hadith, thanks to a man who brought it to my attention.
Actually, I've got that hadith with reference to the menses as well. It says, Muhammad said, isn't it true that a woman can neither pray nor fast during her menses? The woman replied in the affirmative. He said, this is the deficiency in her religion, that's with reference to her religion, not her intelligence. And the reference to her intelligence was with reference to Muhammad said, is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man? They replied in the affirmative. He said, this is the deficiency in her intelligence. So two witnessing are equal to one man. That's with reference to her intelligence. Then the menses is a deficiency in her religion. So he's qualifying two separate situations there. If a woman's having a period, her menses, that's a deficiency in her religion. And the fact that it takes two women to equal the witness of one man, that's a deficiency in her intelligence. So Muhammad's qualifying that. So it would appear that the hadith is confirming the Quran that intellectually, academically, psychologically, a woman is inferior by at least half in comparison to a man, according to Muhammad. And that doesn't contradict the Quran. In fact, it confirms the Quran. So Muhammad's speaking in supporting of Allah. So would you not say then that if that's true, and it has to be in the Islamic recension that it is true, how do you feel then that maybe your opinions are not in line? Maybe do you not think that there might be a deficiency in your reasoning?
Yeah, I don't think that's what it means. But also, can you provide the verse or the chapter in which it states what you just said?
Bukhari chapter volume 6,
within the Quran.
Within the Quran. Oh, I haven't got that one to hand. I can get that in a moment. Bear with me. You want the one in the Quran as well?
Well, you seem to be saying that the Quran is sort of
Quran chapter 2, 282. Quran 2, 282.
Let's bring that up. 282. Did you say Quran 2, 282?
Yes.
Yeah, let's bring that up on screen here so we can see that if I've got the correct one here. We've also got another Muslim who's joined us, Abel Aziz. Welcome, Abel. We're just chatting to Rose at the moment. So is this the correct one? Oh, ye who believe, when you deal with each other in transactions involving future obligations in a fixed period of time, reduce them to writing. Let a scribe write down faithfully as between parties. Let not the scribe refuse to write, as Allah has taught him. So let him write. So let him who incurs the liability dictate, but let him fear his Lord Allah and not diminish aught of what he owes. Okay, this is quite a long one. Is there a part here that we're looking for?
You're looking for the part about the scribe and how it has to be.
Well, it's the next sentence.
There we go.
It's two witnesses for women.
So this bit here. So let his guardian dictate faithfully and get two witnesses out of your men. And if there are not two men, then a man and two women, as ye choose, for witnesses, so that if one of them errs, the other can remind her. The witnesses should not refuse when they are called upon.
I think the most interesting part about this is that there can never be any contracts in Islam between just women. Okay, it has to have at least a man. That's essentially what this is saying, is that even if it's 4 women, that doesn't equate to 2 men. It's saying that there has to be a man there. I've always taken that as a, why women haven't noticed the wording here is that it's a man and a man. Then it goes to a man, 2 women. It never mentions 4 women.
And this is the way that it's handled even today. If my wife went and opened a bank account, she couldn't do that. The bank manager immediately said, well, where's your husband? He needs to come and sign this. She was not allowed to sign this. I had to go there.
But just going back to my point then, it seems that the Hadith is confirming the Quran. So therefore, all women in Islam are under obligation to accept that Muhammad is confirming Allah's statements that women are deficient in their intelligence. Even the Quran there says, if one of them errs, I think the words in Allah's word, a book made clear, a book made easy to understand. I think it's quite clear what Allah and Muhammad are trying to say about women.
Okay, well,
that's your opinion. I mean, if you want to superimpose a negative connotation of if one errs, which all humans are capable of making mistakes,
or it doesn't say that about men. It's not saying that about men. It's only saying that about women. So I respect that men can err as well, but we're not talking about men. We're talking about how the Quran, in the book made clear, a book made easy to understand, is talking about.
Okay, hang on a sec then, Thundrus. Let her answer. So, Rose, what is your view on that verse? You suggested that there's a negative connotation put on that. I mean, I've got it up on screen. Hopefully you can read the part that's highlighted. What is your view on that then? Do you think that's a positive thing? Or do you not have an opinion on this? Or do you think it's a negative thing?
I mean, especially considering the time that it was sent, this is a beautiful thing. This is a revolution when it came to
How can you prove that?
When it came to women's inclusion in the political life, in the economic life, in all aspects of life. And of course, you're saying, how can I prove it? Historical references.
Oh, really? Because Khadija was Muhammad's boss, right? And she was the one who sent him out and paid him. She was the one who had to agree to all his dealings. So and then what happens is she dies. This verse is revealed and it knocks women like Khadija down a peg, actually a couple of pegs.
Okay, but let's assume. But let's be charitable.
That's your historical sources right there.
So this is not knocking women down in any way. This is dealing with a contract.
But you just said that it raised women up. How would this raised up Khadija? How would this raised up Khadija?
We're talking about a specific woman who, was left an inheritance by her husband. However, before her husband having left, he was the boss. So in that time and place, of course, she was a widow, right? So when she proposed,
I've never read that.
Well, then you need to read it.
No, I've never read that. Because her husband died, she kept her status, and nobody would, because she's a widow, all of a sudden she would not be lowered to the other standards that other women in Arabia would be held to. Because even Muhammad's own mother was consistently berated about her son. She had to pay for him to go out and get to learn how to be a better Bedouin, I guess you would say. And but so Khadija never had to deal with any of this. It's just the way that you're talking, but my question still remains, because you said that it was better for women at the time. Would it have been better for Khadija?
Okay, let's not use extreme examples. Okay, so in that time, there was.
Okay, guys, just mute yourselves there. You can laugh quietly. Rose, I think. Okay, I understand your argument. Your argument at that time is that it was good for women. Is it still good for women today, Rose? If we were very charitable and suggested that Muhammad made a leap forward, which is highly questionable, is it good for women today? That verse read. And I'll bring it up again, so just so that you've got it clear. I want to understand what your view is on that verse today.
Can I jump in if Rose?
Yeah, she can defer to you if you like, but let's just give her an opportunity. I'm asking about today, Rose. So you suggest that it was a wonderful thing in those days. I think that the panel is certainly critical of that view. But even if we were charitable and gave you that, what about women today? Is this for women today, or is it only for women at the time?
Well, again, so that verse in particular, right? So we read it from beginning to end. Who is it talking to and who is it referring to, right? So, O ye who believe, when you deal with each other in transactions involving obligations in a fixed period of time, reduce them to a writing. Let a scribe write it down faithfully as between the parties. Let not the scribe refuse to write as Allah has taught him, so let him write. Let him who incurs the liability dictate. So who is the one incurring the liability? And I think not diminished honor, he is if a party liable is mentally deficient or weak or unable himself to dictate, let his guardian dictate faithfully and get two witnesses out of your own. So the guardian, so this verse should be, this ayah in particular is applied in a certain way. And it addresses people who are, you know, between two parties. So I find no problem with it. If there's two parties involved and they choose to follow God's law and they bring in a witness, whether it be two women, or two men, that's their choice.
Yeah, but Rose, here's the point you seem to be missing here. It says that if not two men, then a man and two women, such as ye choose, for witnesses, so that if one of them errs, meaning one woman, the other can remind her. It says no such thing about a man. So what it's saying here, and I think this is clear to anybody, and Aziz can come in a minute, is that it takes two women, and the reason it takes two women is because if one of them errs, then the other can remind her. It says no such thing about a man. So I think this seems to everybody else, perhaps except you, and maybe Aziz, I don't know, we'll see, that this is not fair.
All right, so it's dealing with a contract with between two parties. So parties and their guardians, and if they choose to follow the law, then that's their choice. I don't see a problem with it, and I don't think it's degrading in any way.
Okay, so the fact that it requires two women as opposed to one man, you think that's okay?
I myself would prefer two women witnesses over one.
Would you prefer two men over one as well?
It will be a stronger testimony. The more witnesses you have, the stronger the testimony.
Why does it not apply to men?
Come on, this is not the point. Let's get to the point. The point is that it takes one man plus one man, or it takes one man plus two women in case one of the women makes a mistake so the other one can remind her. So the point is not as many and blah, blah, blah. The point is very, very clear. Are you of the opinion that it is fair and correct and everything, that this is the way that it should be handled, that if you have two women, it always needs to be two of them, whereas it only takes one man? This is the question.
Can I jump in?
No, let her answer.
No, is it fair, I guess, is the question, Rose. That's the question. It's sort of yes or no, I guess, really.
I'll refer to Abdulaziz because you guys didn't, seem to capture the point that I was making. So.
I think we do get your point, Rose. The difficulty that we have is that Muhammad himself said that the best generation of Muslims was his contemporaries, then the following generation, then the following generation. So subsequently, how many generations, 50 generations later, the Muslims of today are nowhere near to the standard of Islam as it was when Muhammad was alive. And certainly 1400 years of Islamic history has shown the contrary to the proposal that you're trying to make. In fact, Islamic countries that are controlled by Sharia law, or as near as it can get to Sharia law, seem to be in conflict to what you're saying. And what you're proposing. In fact, only in recent years we've found that Saudi Arabia, the home of Mecca and the burial place of Muhammad himself, have only just recently allowed women to drive cars. So what you're saying, and I respect what you're saying, we don't think that we're being disingenuous or rude or disrespectful to you, but it seems Allah in a very clear book that's easy to understand, and Muhammad in his Hadith seem to be in opposition to what you're saying, and indeed we have 1400 years of Islamic history to testify to that authenticity too.
All right, go ahead, Aziz.
Yeah, so the ratio is one man to two women, and I think that's very fair, just, and appropriate. It's certainly better than Western standards of taking testimony.
No, Aziz, that's not the ratio. The ratio is 1+1 or 1+2. That's the ratio.
Yeah, like I said, so 1 man to the ratio of 2 women is a fair.
Actually, it would be 1 man. It would be 2 men to 4 women, right? Because you can't even have women do this testimony by themselves or make contracts. And it doesn't say that you're allowed to. It says that you have to have a man. Okay, so what you're doing is completely excluding. You're excluding the fact that the Quran doesn't allow for women to be the scribes, and even for 4 of them to give testimony.
Okay. So if we just use basic math, 2 men to 4 women is still 1 man to 2 women, no? Right? If we reduce it, it's still 1 man to 2 women is a fair testimony, right? This is the ratio we're understanding. Are we all on the same page?
Fair, though? Aziz,
it's very fair. It's very fair. It's very fair compared to Western standards. You needed 50 women. You needed 50 women to try to convict Harvey Weinstein. So I think it's very fair.
Are you going to troll? Because if you want to be serious, no problem. But if you're going to troll, then I'm not going to ask you to stay on. So I want to know, why is it fair? Don't worry about Western civilization.
Yeah.
Just tell me about why is it fair in Islam.
First of all, let's talk about what guardianship means and how we try to understand.
We don't need to talk about that.
Why
I want to know why it's fair that
it's fair.
2 women versus a man.
Two women versus a man.
And it says specifically because one of them, if they forget, the other one will remind them.
Because if it's 1 man, 1 woman, it's going to be a he said, she said thing. And if it's a 1 man, 1 man, it's a he said, she said thing.
That's impossible. You said if it's 1 man, 1 man, it's a he said, she said. No, it'd be a he said, he said.
It's hearsay. If it's 2 people, it's hearsay.
So then it's the same. It's the same thing. Then what you're saying is the same thing. Well, because if it's 1 man, 1 man, it's he said, and then if it's 1 man and 2 women, then it's he said, she said also.
Yeah, it is. It's hearsay. If me and you have an issue in a dispute, and it's just you and me, whether we're male or female or non-binary, we go to the judge. It's going to be hearsay. The judge is going to have a hard time.
Sorry, you're making it worse. You're not making it in any way better, really.
This verse is actually talking about contracts. Okay, it's talking about scribes, right? It's even saying the word scribe in it. So that wouldn't be hearsay, would it? It would actually be a person who would be an authority of the language at the time, who could actually read and write down the language for a mass illiterate number of people.
Yeah.
Can I maybe jump in there at some point when you guys?
Yeah, Buddha, go ahead. You add something. You haven't said anything at all here, so go ahead. Buddha, go ahead. Both our Muslim guests seem to suggest that this is entirely fair and they're okay with this. I'm not sure they get the point here. From what I'm listening to, they don't seem to get the point.
Okay. Let's look at the word guardian. Guardian is basically the equivalent of a lawyer.
No. We're not going to look at the word guardian, Aziz. We're talking about numbers. We're talking about the equivalence. We're talking about that it takes 2 men. And if it's not a man, it doesn't take a man and a woman who can witness. I'm not talking about a judge, witness. So if the man is a witness, he's reliable. And if it's a woman, she on her own is not reliable enough, because then there need to be 2 women as witnesses. We're not talking about guardians. We're not talking about judges. We're talking about witnesses. And this is the thing that we're doing at the moment.
Okay, so any legal system is a reflection of the people.
Guys,
no, we're not talking about legal systems.
Continue. Can I continue? If we look at the word in Arabic for women, it's called nisa. If you look at what the root means, it's the same word that other words come out, like insa, which is to forget. So and also human is called insan. So to the Arabs and the Muslims, this is totally fine, because it is true people err. And in terms of legal standings, from the perspective of the Arabs and the Muslims, it's more reliable to have 2 female witnesses than 1.
But where in this verse does it say
let's leave it at that. Let's leave it. They think it's okay. If it's
okay,
okay,
I think
then
that
this
says
is what we will take.
Yeah, let's leave it there, guys. We can argue this all night. I think that can stand for itself. The viewers can make it.
Okay, can I just maybe add my one
Yeah,
thing?
you go ahead, Buddha. You say something. You've been quiet there.
Okay, so I would look at it like this. Let's take ourselves back to that time in history and understand that most of the males were very barbaric. At that point in time, shortly before the onset of Islam, we had people burying their babies. Now, I'm under the assumption that weren't female, they were males. So imagine a female seeing a male do these kinds of acts. Imagine the fear that a female would have of a male, regardless of religion, whether they've come into Islam, it doesn't matter. And modicum of fear towards
You're dropping
males.
out a bit there, Buddha. We're not hearing you so clearly.
Apologies. Yeah, I'm suffering a little bit here. But the bottom line is this. I would say that a female on her own to give evidence or give witness to any sort of judicial inquiry would put her under immense stress and fear. So having two of them would maybe support each other.
Yeah, but remember, Buddha, remember what's been going on here. They're a scribe. They're being asked to write stuff down. Are you suggesting that every single woman is under such pressure, or would have been under such pressure, that she requires a second woman to assist her?
It's not so far-fetched as not to believe. In my understanding of the society at that time, the barbarism, the violence, it's not.
Okay, let's assume that. I don't agree with that, because you'd have to give evidence why that's the case for all women. But let's assume that was the case. Most Muslims claim that's still, and our two guests here have said that that's okay today. Do you think that that's okay today?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No way, form at all.
Okay. I think we'll leave it at that point. We could argue this point all night, but I think we can move on. I think we'll leave it for the viewers and everybody to think about that. If I understood correctly, both our Muslim panelists here suggest that that's still okay, that it was okay and it still is okay today, that be the case. Because as I say, we can go backwards and forwards on that. But I don't think we'll get anywhere. And I think the answers will stand for themselves.
Can you give me some room, Rob? I don't mean to cut you off. Just give me some room. I just want to say one thing about Guardian. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, okay, but before you do, what is the point about the guardian? Because that's not the point of the verse. So bringing up something about something separate that is not what we're talking about is typically a red herring, and it doesn't lead us to anywhere that we want to go to. So just before you talk about the guardian, what is the point that you want to bring up about the guardian?
Well, it wraps up to the idea why a woman needs a guardian, and it's also considered why also men should have guardians as well. And men do have guardians, but it's more of a legal requirement for women to have guardians. And I just wanted to explain what a guardian is essentially.
Yeah, but that to me, Aziz, won't explain why it requires two women, though, because it's not talking about whether they need a guardian. It's talking about whether one essentially will forget and the other will remind them. So it's talking about their memory, their intelligence, that sort of thing. So it doesn't matter how many guardians they got. This is seemingly to refer specifically to their abilities to remember and to repeat or to record or whatever the case may be.
Fair enough. But when you need legal representation or legal work done, we hire a lawyer, right?
Yes, and that lawyer could be male or female.
But you're not obligated. That's the difference.
Obligated. Yeah, it's not obligated. Sure, and I agree.
But when a woman's gonna get married, she has to have. It's between the men, right? And when they're gonna get divorced, in the Qur'an 65:4, it says that it has to be two men that arbitrate. The woman, there's no such thing as a female divorce attorney. So what you're saying is guardian is actually just a word to subjugate women, because it means that they cannot achieve what the man can.
Well, men have guardians too. It's just then.
So, but then the point is mute, though, isn't it? So the guardian could be anybody. So, but that doesn't address their deficiency, seemingly their deficiency in intelligence, and especially if you're going to claim that this is still relevant today.
Okay.
When is a woman the guardian of the man? When is the woman the guardian of the man?
Can I just interject to just make a point? So that chapter in particular does not say women are not allowed to go into a contract of their own. So what it's addressing, Right. So that particular chapter does not say women are not allowed to enter into contracts or any of that situation. So what it's addressing is two parties who wish to call their witnesses, and God gives them guidance on how to form a contract using witnesses.
Yes, men witnesses. It says that men have to be there. It says a man has to be there. It does not say that 4 women equal 2 men in a contract, does it?
You got to give us some credit. You know, we're talking about a society that believes in gender roles and reinforces it legally and
Can we go back to the point?
Okay.
But what she said was just factually untrue, because it does mention that it has to have a man there. It does never mention that 4 women equal 2 men in contracts.
Why? So we've got that now.
Can we get back to the point, please? The point was, if you don't mind,
let me just ask them a question.
The point was that we were talking about whether the Hadith contradict the Quran, or which one you would go with. We're talking about the Quran now, and that wasn't the question that was raised. And we've really gone off on a topic and a tangent that wasn't relevant to what I actually raised. What I raised was with reference to the Hadith. When Muhammad making a claim that women are stupid, forgive me for paraphrasing, but stupid in comparison to a man, and then using the Quran to confirm the statements. That was the question, not the other stuff. And because you said that you will go along with the Hadith as long as it doesn't contradict the Quran. The moment that the Hadith contradicts the Quran, you throw the Hadith away. I found a Hadith that supports the Quran, and I wanted your opinion on that, but I'm not going to get an answer. And as Robs has said, we'll leave that for the audience to discuss, and perhaps now would be a good time to move on.
Okay, there's somebody else here. Who's this New Spirit? New Spirit, can you unmute and let us know who you are? I'm not sure if you are somebody that I know or not, so let us know who you are.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Hello?
Yes, who are you, sir? And tell us a little bit, how did you get the link and who are you?
Okay, I'm Samir. I'm Samir from Algeria.
And yes, and are you a Muslim, ex-Muslim, or where are you?
No, I am Muslim. I am Muslim. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, good.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're going to move on from that. Sorry, Stops, go ahead.
How did you get here?
It's peaceful. It's peaceful from our Facebook thing, Samir. It's peaceful. Y'all know who I'm talking about. Aziz just gave him the link, obviously.
No, I posted it. I posted it in there, so my apologies. I posted it in there. All right, that's fine. We'll come back to that. All right, New Spirit, thank you. You can just mute yourself for the moment. All right, we're going to move on from that point. And again, I think there's not much else that can be said there. I think our Muslim panelists suggest that it's okay for 1 man and 2 women. They feel that that's fair and just. We obviously don't, and we can argue that point all night. But I think we'll leave it to the viewers there. So we can move on, because what we were really doing is reviewing all of the videos and the shows that we've had over the year, which I know we won't get through all of them. And that's where we can get some of the comments from some of our Muslim guests here. So let's move on.
Rob, did we solve this question now? Is it true that if the Hadith contradicts the Quran, we can decide ourselves which one we prefer?
I think Rose was clear that she only accepts certain hadiths, which I think is problematic, and other Muslims on here might have different views on that. But I think that was her position. I don't know about other position. We can stop here, and we can just talk about this, because we'll have an entire show on it. I'm okay with that if you want to do that, but I'm not sure.
No, I just wanted to know whether we are clear on this, that anybody can choose what they want, how they want, and create their own version of what it is that they believe. Because this, I think, is very important for everybody to understand, that this, at the end of the day, is what it boils down to. And this is something that we need to take away for all our shows as a basis, that this is what actually happened.
Well, our Muslim guests can happily answer, but you'd have to put it as a question, because we've got new people who have joined us. So maybe put it as a proper question so that everybody can hear that. Stops.
I don't want this as a question, because I know exactly what's going to happen. Everybody's going to disagree, but that's what we see at the moment. So the conclusion for me at the moment is that, yes, this at the end of the day is what happens because there are so many contradictions, internal contradictions and external contradictions, and that is what you have to do.
Can I just jump in? I have a few thoughts on that. First thing I would like to mention is Rob, Stops, and Wyso. If you guys give me a link, I don't share it without your permission. I've never done that, and I just wanted to say that.
Sorry for the accusation, Aziz.
No, I didn't take any offense. I just wanted to be absolute clear. I don't do none of that stuff. It's not in my interest to do that. One thing I wanted to say is when we look at a religion that is stagnant, 9 times out of 10, it's a dead religion we find in historical textbooks. If we look at a culture that is stagnant, it's also a dead culture we find in historical books. Religion and culture has to be dynamic. It has to evolve, and it has to react to the current conditions the people who practice a given culture or religion are experiencing. So in my mind, religion has to evolve. It has to be dynamic, and if it is static and doesn't evolve, it's a dead religion.
I'm not sure what you're referring to there specifically. I mean, those are just statements that are floating in the air that are not tangible in any way.
Okay, because the question is why do we have? From what I understood from Stops is why do we have so much conflicting opinions from Muslims all over the world? You got like some kind of liberal Muslims, you got some fundamental Muslims, you got et cetera, and they all conflict and argue with each other. I say that's totally normal, and that's what you should expect from a religion that is being practiced by millions of people and who are looking to make sense out of it. And if it wasn't a religion where people argued about it, it's a dead religion, like, I don't know, a Sumerian religion or ancient Egyptian religion or any religion that we find in historical books where, people really don't argue about.
I think you're totally misunderstanding religion. The problem you've got there, Aziz, is that it is not the Muslims or, say, the Christians or the Jews or the Hindus that are the authority on the religion. It is the text that they subscribe to that is the authority, not the adherents. I'll give an example. Judaism is based on the Torah, if you like. Christianity is based on Genesis to Revelation. The Bible is the authority on Christianity. If there's a confliction, you go to something like 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16. You go to 1 Corinthians 4:6. You go to 1 Corinthians chapter 1, where it says all of you should be united in the same mind and in the same line of thought. So what you're saying there is not consistent with what the holy texts teach. You only find that conflict in a religion when people do not know what the religion teaches, per se. That is where the problem lies. So when you're going around the world and you're finding a particular religion where they're all not singing from the same hymn sheets, it's because they're not reading from the same book.
And I would also go ahead.
Hang on.
Go ahead, Aziz.
Sorry, guys. If we look at Judaism, if we just look at the Torah, you give the Torah. Yeah, can you give me a second?
No. I don't want you to go to the Torah, Aziz. You made a claim about religion. I want to hear from the other Muslims here. You suggesting it needs to be dynamic and change. We should not point to other religions here. If your religion is strong enough and you can defend it, great. But at no point should you be pointing to other religions to tell us how they do things. We're not interested in that.
Okay, according to me, the Judaism and Christianity is part of my religion as well, as a Muslim. To me, this is not separate from Islam.
Yeah, but you don't need to point to them to make a point about your religion.
But
right?
it is separate from Islam.
To me, it's not. To me, it's not.
So then you believe that Jesus is God.
Hang on. No. Don't go down there. Okay? Don't go down there.
Okay, Rob, I'll make it simple. I'll make it simple.
Aziz, wait for me, please. I want to speak to the other Muslims that have joined us here. As Jesna, I think it is. Jesna, good evening. You've joined us there. Can you unmute and just introduce yourself?
I've got a bit of a cold, but forgive me. My name is.
I'll just make you a bit louder. You're a little bit soft there. Let me make you a little bit louder.
Can you hear me now?
Hang on a second. Let me turn you up. Go ahead. Speak now.
It's bit. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, Muslim, and I wanted to touch on the point of that Aziz guy.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a bit like, I don't know if it was Aziz, but somebody else on the panel said that if people have different opinions from the same belief, then it doesn't. It means that they're not reading from the same book. Who said that?
That was somebody else on the panel. It doesn't really matter, does it? There's somebody else did say that. Yes.
Okay. It doesn't really make sense to me, because if you are reading from the same book, you're not gonna read it the same way or like have the same perception as everybody else.
But you should do that, right? If it was written by God.
You can't necessarily, because you're not gonna have. This is why we have like different denominations.
But Islam is a book made clear. It is easy to understand. So no matter what language, no matter what tribe, no matter what tongue or what culture, Allah has made a book that is easy to understand. So there should be no conflict. When it says do not eat pork, that means do not eat pork. There's no debate there. When it says do not have sex outside of marriage, or whatever the rules are in Islam, they're quite easy to understand. There are no reasons for debate. It's quite simple. It's binary. It's black and white. So your point is mute.
It doesn't really make sense, because there are some rules, like as you've just mentioned, but like for instance, with the Hanafi group, they're considered to be Sabians. They believe that women have to pray differently towards men, which isn't existent in other like sort of denominations, where they say men and women have to pray exactly the same. So even rules like prayer, which is compulsory, is different within Islam. And the reason why it's different is because people have their own different perceptions about it.
Yeah, but that's problematic, that, Jesna, because if this book came from God and was directly dictated, and you believe that every single word in there is the direct word of God, what we should expect is a clear, concise, complete, and error-free message that every person would follow, and there would be no interpretations or differences or anything like that. It would be crystal clear to every single Muslim that ever read the Quran. And what we notice is exactly the opposite.
No,
it's a test, and you need to know what the test is.
No, because no two people in this world is made the same.
Yeah, but they do have the ability to rationalize and to read a message, correct? They don't have to be made the same, but they do have to be able to read a message, right? God does have to send a clear message.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Okay, so if it's clear, then it doesn't require interpretation, right? If I say to you, do not walk across the bridge, it doesn't mean that you can walk across the bridge any other way or that you need to consult anybody else. The message is entirely clear. Do not walk across the bridge.
No, but then Muslims won't agree, because some of them will say, yeah, you can cross the bridge walk across the bridge for this reason, or like some people you will find.
Yes, but they're wrong. You know, we can objectively say they're wrong, right? Because the message is clear.
We can.
Or let me make it even clearer. I'm not God, but God could make it crystal clear. Do not ever cross the bridge under any circumstances. Could anybody ever misinterpret that?
No.
Okay. Why could God not do that in every aspect in the Quran?
But people don't. People won't follow the rules black and white. It's just not gonna happen. Maybe in the beginning, people will be able to follow the rules.
I'm not worried, Jason, we're not worried about the people per se. What we're worried about is the message. Could God have made this crystal clear like I've just elucidated? Regardless of whether people follow it or not, that's a separate point. But if the message is crystal clear, then everybody can be judged on the message. If the message is not crystal clear and there's 50 different interpretations, then it makes judgment by God much more difficult, especially from our point of view. So I'm not interested in whether people themselves can misinterpret something. I'm interested in whether God could send a clearer message. And I think the answer is pretty obvious.
That's not how it works, though. There is no clear message.
Exactly, this is my point.
Yes, and that's problematic, isn't it? But you seem to think that that's good. Let me ask other members.
I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying I'm just calling a spade a spade. That's how it is.
Yeah, I know, but also if it is how it is, then you've got to recognize that that's problematic. I'm going to let what's his name here, New Spirit. Do you want to come in, and then I'm going to bring in Takia Watch, who's also joined us. So New Spirit, do you want to respond to that, the point that that was brought up?
Yes, Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Rob. And hi, everybody. Before I start, I have to say that you have to pardon my English because I do not speak English very well. My English is not perfect. And I want to answer two questions. The first question is about the Quran, the Hadith, and whether it is possible for the Quran to contradict Hadith and vice versa. And the second question is about the simplicity of the Quran. And should the Quran be very simple? Yes, thank you very much. The first question is there any contradiction between Quran and Hadiths? Now, if we think logically, we know that Quran is sent from God. If we make the hypothesis that the Quran is sent from God, so it is very clearly that Prophet Muhammad is also a messenger of God. So the things that are in the Quran are correct, and the things that the Prophet Muhammad is saying are correct. So logically, it should not be any contradiction between the two parts. Now, if we find a contradiction between Hadith and the Quran, or a clear verse of the Quran, now, if you go to the Muslim scholars, they say it is very clear. So it should not be any contradiction. If there is any contradiction in the Hadiths to the Quran, it means there is a problem in the Hadith, not in the Quran. And we have to follow some rules to verify whether these hadiths are correct or not. So this is why you can find hadiths are classified for authentic hadith, sahih hadith, hasan hadith. There's many classification of hadiths in the Sunnah branch, for example, and you'll find other hadiths for the Shiites, for example. Now, what is the difference between the hadiths in the Shia sect and in the Sunni sect?
No, we don't. Hang on, please. I don't want you to go down that route. I think we need to stick to the main point, which is your claim is that, hey, if there's a contradiction between the two, then we need to go with the Quran. But do you agree that every single hadith that is labeled Sahih has been authenticated as true?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so if there's if one of my panelist colleagues here brings you a contradiction between a Sahih hadith and the Quran, what would be your response? Let's not worry, we can bring the example very likely. But if there is a contradiction between a Sahih hadith and the Quran, what is your response to that?
No, if we answer that from someone who understands the Quran, the Hadith, it cannot be possible at all. It is impossible to find contradiction between Sahih Hadith and the Quran. It's impossible. Now, why? Because thousands of Muslim scholars worked on that through histories, through centuries, so you cannot find any contradiction about that. So, okay, that's one. Two, I want to go to the second.
Wait, you got to push back on that. You got to push back on that. Right, because what you're saying is, it's been 1,000, 1,400 years, and they haven't been able to disprove any of this and that. How many years has it been safe for people to speak up against Islam? Let's just answer that question first.
Why so? That's a separate question.
No, I know it's a separate question, but it leads to the point that I hear this from Muslims all the time, saying, there's never been anything disproven. Well,
he's not saying that. Why say he's not saying that? He's saying that the Sahih hadiths and the Quran cannot possibly be in contradiction because there's been all these scholars.
That's what I was getting at too. I was actually looking on my computer too to bring up the hadiths that I was going to mention. He's essentially saying, they've had all these centuries to find these contradictions, right? These scholars. But what he's not mentioning is how, for the most part, people have never been safe to be able to dispute it. Such as there is a hadith where Muhammad comes and he says, I got a revelation that there's torment in the grave. Now, Samir, do you believe in this one? Do you believe that there's that two angels come to you when you die and they ask you, did you follow Muhammad? And if you say no, then you get tormented until the day of resurrection. Or if you say yes, then you sleep peacefully. Do you believe this hadith?
Yes, I do believe in that. Yes, I do believe in that. 100%.
Okay, so in the Quran, it says that Allah takes souls with him when you die and then sends them back to earth to be resurrected. So where does that come into play with your version that, all these scholars have never found any contradictions? Well, it's because they have an agenda.
Yes, okay. I will answer that after my second question because it is very important, talking about the clarity of the Quran.
Okay, I want to, please, I don't want to keep interrupting. We've got to keep it short. We've got a full panel here, and I don't want a long monologue. So we really
very quickly,
keep it short because I need to have everybody come in on this.
Yeah, very quickly.
But you always does.
Yes, logically, if we say that the Quran is for all humankind, for all the mankind. So in humans, we find humans with low IQ and humans with high IQ. So it is clearly and logically in the Quran, you will find some verses for the people who are low IQ and some verses for the people who are high IQ. Because if you read the Quran, you will find in the Quran some verses talking about the men of sciences and the men of wisdom who understand the Quran and the higher meaning of the Quran. Because in the Quran, you will find some meanings that are simple for everybody to understand, and some other meanings that are very high to understand, and they are destined to the men of sciences and the men of wisdom. Okay?
That's a problem. Well, that's a big problem. But I just want you to answer, and then we're going to move on, about the simplicity, the Quran not being clear, concise, and error-free. And we could easily have made the Quran better. And why is it not? Why is it not better?
Yeah, because it is not. For me, Quran is perfect. Now the question is, if it is the God word, so you should take in your consideration that this word, which is the Quran, will be constant through history. So it means after 1,000 years, for example, the people after 1,000 years will read the Quran. So the Quran should take a full message to the full humankind through time. You should take in your consideration the time element. So if the Quran talked to the people before 1,400 years, 14,000 years, 1,400 years before, so the Quran will talk to the people after 1,000 years from now. And you have to take that into consideration. So if you understand this angle, you can understand why the Quran is written like that. You know, you will find some verses for the simple people. For example, the rules in the Quran. You should pray, you should do zakat, and you should do that and make hajj and all that. It's very simple for anybody to understand. But if you go to some verses, we're talking about scientific facts, for example, or talking about scientific phenomena. Now, these verses are not for the simple people. They are for the people with high IQ. And that's what we're talking about in the Quran.
Okay, yes. I'm going to move on. Taki, I want to bring yourself in, and then we'll have some of our other guys. So welcome, good evening.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Yeah, do you want to respond to some of the things you've heard from some of our Muslim panelists?
Well, first of all, I think I want to touch on this testimony thing. But before that, I just want to say that the Quran claims that there's two types of verses. One is actually clear, and the one is not that clear. And this is found in chapter 3:7. So I think that's important to know. Someone mentioned, for example, that that eating pork is not allowed. Well, it is allowed when you're severely hungry. That is found in chapter 5:3. But that's not really what I want to touch on. But I just want to make sure that you guys know about this. There are chapters that are super clear, and the chapters not super clear. So I'll post it to you on Discord when it comes to the testimony thing. So I want to show what the Sharia book shows according to Shafi school. On Discord, I send you that link.
Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry. Do you want to share your screen and I'll bring that up for people to see? At the moment, I've got that verse that you talked about here, which is the the one that's got the basic or fundamental meaning, and then some that are allegorical.
Can do that, but that's I think this is quite famous reference.
Do you want to share your screen and I'll
I'm on my phone right now.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I can't really see it, but this basically says there are two types of verses. One is super clear, the other one is not that clear. So I think that's the claim that Islam makes. So just to be fair about that, but if you can look at the link that I showed you about testimony, they give an example in court when a man and his wife disagree. So
yeah, 1 second.
One voice, it up now. One vote is what I expect.
Is this Reliance of the Traveller Revised Edition? Is that the one?
It's a really good reference. It's from Shafi school.
And it's page 5. Goodness, page 535.
530.
Yeah, this is going to take a while to bring up here. So do you want to talk about it while it downloads here?
I can wait. Someone else can take the mic.
All right. Is there one of let's just say my side of the debate that wants to respond? So Stops or Thunderous or Why So? Do one of you guys want to respond to anything you've heard here?
Samir never mentioned what I brought up, which is that okay, here's the thing. It says in this hadith, I'll just bring it up on screen. And I think that this gets down to the crux of it. If you believe that Muhammad is receiving revelations in his everyday life that didn't make it into the Quran, then you don't understand the point of the Quran, right? Because the point of the Quran is that it's the revelation. But it says here, it has been revealed to me, right? That you will be put in trials in your graves. So Muhammad is being revealed. He's been giving a revelation, But yet in the Quran, it actually says that Allah takes souls. So Samir didn't answer my question, because that would be a contradiction of what the Quran says. But he actually believes in these two angels coming down and putting people in test in their grave. Nowhere in the Quran does it state that. It actually says that when you die, and there's an example of a guy who dies along with his donkey beside him, and Allah had him die, and then it was like 100 years later, and Allah raised him up and said, oh, look to your side, your donkey is still there. You know, don't go into the town. He tells him, don't go into the town because those people won't believe you. Okay, so if that guy died, was he put into torment of the grave? Of course not. And if Allah is just and fair as he claims to be, how can he put people into torment of the grave without them being known, without knowing about it, without telling them about that? That would be unjust and unfair, especially for people who never even met Muhammad. Okay, it makes no sense. Angels coming down before Muhammad and then are asking these questions, or is this something that Allah created just because Muhammad came into existence? It's a huge theological concept that Muslims refuse to get into.
Okay, thank you very much. I can answer you, my dear brother. So first of all, I think you did not read the explication of the Muslim scholars about that, because we do believe as Muslims that there is two parts. There is the day of judgment, and there is what happened in the grave. The things that are happening in the grave are similar to the death, to the near-death experiences, for example. Even people in life can see what will happen to them in the phenomena of near-death experiences, and you can research that, you know, and you can read what the scientists are talking about that, are saying about that, about these phenomena, the near-death experiences. So what happened in the grave is similar to the near-death experiences. You can see where will you go, to the heaven or to the hellfire, you know. And we do believe that it is just like it's like deja vu phenomena, you know. But you cannot, you will go to heaven or to the hellfire after the day of judgment. And the day of judgment, we all be all dead, and we'll be all, you know, or so it means everyone will take his
okay. So I got the verse. I'm putting the verse on screen right now, because I want you to explain to me when it says that Allah takes the souls at the time of their death, right? So Allah takes their souls. How are the souls being punished inside of the grave?
Okay, I don't see any verse here.
It's 39:42. That is the Quran.
What is the Quran?
It's right here.
Yeah, why? So I think we're going very in depth here. I'm not sure what's the bigger point here.
The bigger point is that he's saying that the Quran and the Hadith, if they're Sahih Hadith, he believes them because he believes that they are affirmed by the Quran. But what I am getting at is that the Quran and the Hadith tend to contradict each other quite a bit, and he's not willing to do it because, once again, what did he just say? He said scholars. It's all about the scholars, and he also talks about intellect. He talks about intelligence. Well, he's not referring to his own intelligence. He's just going because scholars said this is true. This is what happened. So what I want you to do, Samir, is I want you to explain to me if Allah takes the souls at the time of death, how are they still being punished inside the grave?
No. Listen, my dear brother. It is not about the soul. What happened in the grave, it is not about the soul, you know. It is not about the soul. It is, we called, it's like the barzakh. Barzakh is another phenomenon. It is like the soul, you know. So but I have to make something clear for you, my dear brother, okay? You talk about the scholars. You have to take into consideration that we Muslims are very logic. For what we are very logic? It's like you respect the doctor because he has knowledge about medicine. You respect him. We do the same. We respect our scholars because they have knowledge about Islam more than us. They study Islam, so we do respect them. Okay?
You're not answering my question. You're not answering my question. I asked you a very direct question.
I am coming to your answer.
So if the person is dead, that means their body doesn't feel. The only thing left is a soul inside of the grave.
No. Inside the grave is a transition period between life and the afterlife.
But Allah takes the soul, so it's just a body.
Yes.
How is the body suffering and the soul isn't? Or is the soul suffering because the body can't feel anything? It's dead.
Listen, brother. Please don't interrupt me very much.
You're not answering my question. I'm answering a very direct question, Samir.
This is in the screen. It is not. Let me answer. Please. Please.
Okay, I'm not sure we're getting anywhere with this, guys. And we can't hear you.
I have my reference.
Okay, ask Rose. Ask Rose what she thinks. Okay, because Samir is just doing a batting around.
Yeah, but why so? Why so? I think this is. Why so? I think this is too in depth. We're going too in depth here. For these, we need to keep the topic much higher level. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. It's going to be confusing for the viewers, and our Muslim panelists are not necessarily going to be able to answer this off the cuff. And of course, you know, they're going to try and defend it. So I think we need to be not so deep down level with this sort of stuff. But I want to go back to Watch because he said we were just waiting for him. So yeah. I've got it up here. I think this is what you're looking for.
It should be page number 535. I think you're quite close.
Sorry.
So you're at like 520 something like that. Right?
Sorry, I thought it was 525. And this is in relation to because
this is about the testimony in court.
Okay.
So if a man and a woman disagree,
yes.
Then
okay, so here we go. This is.
Yeah, so we start in the middle of the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is Shafi school, one of the 4 legitimate school in Islam. So what they do when they have these schools is they cook down from the Qur'an and the Hadith what the ruling is. So they basically interpret it for you. So that's why you have to subscribe one of the 4 schools. So this is what happens if a man and a woman are in court and they disagree. We can read, all of it we want, or we can just read, I guess, the second paragraph, last sentence. But if they disagree,
yes,
the last sentence, yeah. But if they disagree,
you're not.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Stops you.
You're not presenting.
I'm not presenting. You say. Hang on a moment. Present
if
to
somebody
everybody.
else talks, you're gone.
Oh, okay. There we go. It should be now presenting to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to read the passage? It's quite powerful, actually.
Okay. So if a husband and wife disagree, in court, when neither side has proved as to whether he has given her all or part of the marriage payment, then the wife's word is accepted over the husband's. But if they disagree as to whether they have had sexual intercourse, the husband's word is accepted over the wife's.
Yeah. So obviously in court, they don't have the same voice. So we saw that when it comes to one part, she has more to say about it. When it comes to another part, he has more to say about it. So yeah, I just want you guys to know that when they code it down from the Quran and Sunnah, this is what it looks like, and the explanation is found in the Hadith because the Quran should be explained by the Hadith. So since I'm on my phone, can you go to sunnah.com? I want to show you something.
1 second.
Yeah. And then you search for sunnah.com. And then in search field, you type 2 evidence intelligence. 2 like TWO. Yeah, and then intelligence. So this is how they explain the reasons for it.
Let me just make it a bit bigger.
You see that it's you see, yeah, you can just zoom in. Yeah, they explain that the woman asked, "Oh, Allah's messenger," is in the middle of the page.
Yeah, this here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. So in the middle of the page, you see the woman.
Have we got it there?
Yeah. The woman asked, "O Messenger of Allah, what is the deficient with our intelligence?" Should we read from there? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
They asked, "Why is it so?" O the Messenger of Allah. He replied, "You curse." So yeah, if you go up a little bit, it explains that women will be majority in hell.
Yes.
Ask him, why is it like that? So we can take from the place where you marked it last time. They asked, "Why is it so, O Allah's messenger?" And he replied, "Because you curse frequently and you are ungrateful to your husbands." That is the explanation of why most women will be in hell. And I've not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you. Cautious, sensible man could be led astray by some of you. So it's obviously blaming women for that. Then the woman asked, "O Messenger of Allah, what is deficient in our intelligence and religion?" And he said, "Isn't the evidence of 2 women equal to the witness of 1 man?" That's basically what we're talking about. And they replied in affirmative. And he said, "This is deficient of her intelligence." So, Yeah, this is the explanation, basically. So I don't care about all of it. I just care about if Islam is being implemented today, do you guys believe that this should be the ruling? That's what I care about.
Okay, can I answer you with your brother?
Can I
okay.
Okay.
Let's have a Rose first, please. Go ahead, Rose.
Okay.
No, it was Jesna.
Oh, sorry, it was Jesna. My apologies. Sorry, Jesna. I didn't see you there. Go ahead. What is your view on that hadith there?
Actually, there's somebody that's calling me. Can you get Rose to reply to it?
Okay, if you mute yourself, Rose, do you want to respond to that? She might be away.
Yes, I can respond to that. Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So the first thing, I don't know. Okay, so talking about about women and religion, for example, the last phrase of this hadith, it talks about that women are نقص في الدين. I don't have the words in English. Can you just show us the screen again, please, to read just and to answer you, please? Yes, thank you very much. We'll take the last phrase, for example, that to replying in the affirmative, he said this is deficiency in her religion. Okay, yes, because we do believe that there is deficiency for women in religion. Why? Because women have menstruations and they have periods. They cannot do salah and prayers, and this is mathematically they have deficiency in religion because they have more days they can't practice the religion. This is very, very clearly and very logic. The second thing, talking about women, talking about testimony about women. Yes, personally I do believe that women, they are not intelligent like men, and I do believe also that women have changing in hormones. And scientifically, if you ask any doctor, any physician about hormones and the effects of the hormones in the woman body and the woman minds, he can answer you clearly that there is huge changes, emotional changes, in the woman physics and the woman mind. It is clear in sciences. So you can read about that in the medicine, especially. Okay, so these two phenomena proves that this hadith is very true, and about talking about that the more women in the hellfire, for example, it is very clear also, that it's like I don't have words here. Okay, so
I think it's clear what you're saying, though.
Yes, I think it's very clear. It is
that you do believe that women are intelligent, are deficient in their intelligence and in their religion, and you've given the reasons why. So, but yes. Going on from that, that means that there's certain things that women, in your view, or in the Quran or in the Hadith for you, cannot do, right? There's certain things. If you're deficient in intelligence, that means you're not equal to a man in intelligence, and therefore there's certain things that you are not or cannot be permitted to do, correct?
No, you are not equal to the men in general, but you will find some exceptions. You will find some exceptions that men and women, one woman is intelligent from another man.
Where are you getting that from?
Yes,
go ahead.
It is a rule with exceptions, with small exceptions. Why? My proof. What is my proof? It is very clear. Let me give you my evidence, please. Let me go to this phrase and you can talk. No, please. This phrase and you can talk. It is very clear. I told you many times, that through history, for example, you will find that the biggest inventors are men. You will find that the biggest politicians are men. You will find that the biggest military leaders are men.
Court, my man. In court, please. That's my question.
Yes. In court. Let's go to the court, for example.
Yes. I have friends. Yes. I have friends right. Can I finish one sentence? I have friends right now. They live in Saudi Arabia. They are ladies. They are undercover disbelievers. They don't believe in God anymore because they're seriously mistreated. Do you believe that this is in court today? Forget about Muhammad. Maybe there was good reason for that. My question is,
it has nothing to do with Islam. Yes. But the Saudis are the one has nothing to do with Islam.
I'm asking about real Islam. Should you have two women to be equal to one man in court? Where do you stand on that? That's my main...
Yes. In court, it's like that. Two women equal to one man. Why? Because they have hormones, my dear brother. That's the reason.
May I ask you a question?
Go ahead. I think he's made his point clear. That's fine. He thinks that women are deficient.
But can any woman be smarter than you, or know more about the religion, or be more pious? Can any woman in the world be that way over any man? Is it possible?
An exception, yes. As exceptions, yes.
So then that would negate this whole hadith as true. What you just did. Well, that's the point. You're saying Notice it says in her intelligence, which means it can be a singular. It doesn't have to be a plural form. It can be just an individual. And you just admitted that there are women who can be smarter than you, which means that your intelligence would be more deficient than hers. And not to mention piety. Okay, there could be women that are more pious than you are. In fact, in history, according to the Qur'an, Mary was the most pious person up to that point, and that's why she was given the breath of Allah to give Jesus, right? So actually, up until that point, she was the most pious. How does that fit into your claim that this is an authentic hadith and it has to be true when it speaks in the singular, for one, and you're admitting that there can be women that are more pious than you and more intelligent?
Okay, my dear brother, if one woman from 100% person is intelligent, it doesn't. We cannot say that women are intelligent from men. If we have 99 men intelligent from women, we can say that men are intelligent from women, with the exception of 1%. 1% cannot be the majority, my dear friend. That's what the Quran is referring to, and that's what the Hadith are referring to. That's one. Two, talking about women, I told you that history proved that. Now, if you go to the NASA, for example, to the biggest research centers in the world, you will find the majority are men. If you look for the high IQ person in the world, you will find the majority are men working in NASA, for example, you know. So it is clear evidence from our reality that men are more intelligent than women, specifically in mathematics and scientific fields.
So then why are more women graduating college than men are? Across the West, across the world, except in Islamic countries where they're not given the freedom to go to college and study as much as women in the West. But in the West, such as in America, more women are going to colleges, getting higher scores, getting higher payer jobs, and so where does that fit into this narrative that you have?
Okay, thank you very much. So if I can ask you a very simple question, you know, in mathematics, give me 4 scientific women in mathematics through history, just 4 women.
Okay, that's not the point.
I could give you thousands of men mathematics.
Sorry.
Okay? I think my point is very clear, yes.
Rose, do you want to respond to this? Your Muslim colleague, or Jesna, either of you want to respond? He's very clear that women are deficient in intelligence. So what is your response to this, please?
My response is that I'm going to say really quickly and then Rosa can say. I don't think the gentleman understands the phrase of behind every great man there is an equal and greater woman.
Yeah, but that's a phrase that was made up by people. We're referring specifically to this hadith that's on the screen here at the moment.
Okay, all right. Right. There's an ayah in the Quran that's popped up that comes to my mind, and it's the longest ayah in the Quran, and it also refers to the testimony of when it comes to like writing things down. They say that in order for like a testimony to come through in the court, there has to be 2 women witnesses and then a male witness. If there isn't 2 women, then there's just two like men. So it does fit into the correlation between. It's not contradictory, so it fits into the Bukhari. Now, if the Bukhari is Sahih, which it says down there it is, and them two fit. And then I asked my teacher one time, and I said, "Why is this?" And they said that all women are deficient in intelligence, which, in my opinion, I don't really agree with that.
Okay, I understand you don't agree with it, but it's there. So it's either your opinion or it's what this...
Well. I also want to.
Can I just respond really?
You go ahead, Rose.
Okay, so I think everybody's reading it without actually understanding it. Okay, so this hadith, right? If you read it carefully and you try to understand it, it doesn't say that because the woman is deficient in her mind, hence there has to be 2 women witnesses. Rather, it's the opposite. It says the deficiency in her intelligence is due to her the evidence having to be 2 women. So if you guys read it over, right, it's the system which is there, meaning 2 witnesses. Hence, this is the deficiency. It doesn't say that. Hey, because
1400 years of Islamic history, and Muslim countries around the world, as it is present, have all got it wrong, but you've got it right.
Well, let's read it together, okay? So
no. I'm just asking.
Just take the question. Take the question without looking at the text. Rose, don't read the text. Do you think that women are deficient in their intelligence?
No, I do not. And this hadith does not say that either.
Thank you.
What it's saying.
Brilliant. I agree.
Here's what it's saying, right? The woman asked, O messenger, what is deficient in our intelligence and religion? He said, is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man? They replied in the affirmative. He said, this is the deficiency in her intelligence.
Okay, stop there, Rose. What do you understand by that?
I'm understanding that because
how do you understand that? What does that mean to you?
What that means is saying that because what you need is two women in a contract to be witness. This is the deficiency in her intelligence. It doesn't say, oh, the woman is deficient in her mind. It does not state that.
That's the direct conclusion from that, Rose. Go ahead, Takia.
Yeah, I guess my main question is, do you believe that this should be implemented today, where Islam is basically has influence? That's what I care about, and I think Jesna also had something to say. I think she was interrupted, but same question goes to you, Rose. You don't believe that this should be implemented today, right? In any Islamic court where Muslim has the power, I guess.
Well, I don't think that particular chapter in particular is addressing courts. It's for, contract making between two parties. So if a person so chooses to bring one male witness and two female witnesses, then I don't see that as a problem or contradicting any laws that we have in place today.
But it says testimony, right? So I guess your answer is no. I don't want to speak for you, but like in court, do you think that this should be implemented? That's my main question, both for you and Jesna. You don't believe it's in the court, Rose? It says testimony. That's why I'm.
Can you answer that?
No, ladies. You've spoken a lot, and I think a lot of men have speak here, so let them speak their mind until they finished. Jesna, do you want to respond? Like in court, that's my main question.
It's not. I want to keep it short. I don't think there should be a law like that. Okay, maybe it made sense 1400 years ago, right? But it doesn't make sense today.
Okay, and Rose, what's your view?
Well, I think we should really study what that particular chapter is stating. So this is contracts between two parties, and they're asked to bring witnesses. So does it actually contradict modern laws? I don't think so. So it's like me going to a notary republic and then saying, you be the witness for this contract.
No,
so it's
what if you don't have two women?
Let me squash this. It's very easy. Rob, in the document that I sent you, it's Sharia court for Shafi school. If you open that again, page 637, it actually tells it's legal issues. 637.
Yeah, I've got to find it here. It loads up very slowly on this.
Okay, but you're close. You're 640. So I just want to hear your take on it. So I guess your answer is no, or I think Rose says that she don't believe this is linked to the court. So that's where I think this is where the passage actually clarifies this. So if you look at let's see, 637. Well, let me see, 637. It should be go down a bit. There, okay. The testimony of the following is legally acceptable. Yeah, is legally acceptable when it concerns cases involving property or transaction dealing with property, such as two women. That's the first alternative. Or you need two women plus, or two men. That's the first alternative. Second is two women plus one man. So now you need three people. Or third alternative is, or a male witness together with the oath of plaintiff. I don't know what that is.
Plaintiff, yeah, that's the person who's making the charge.
Can I say something? Like, I don't know what's it like in other countries, but particularly with the English and the Welsh law jurisdiction, it says that so when you go to like a civil court, right, and you have like a problem with somebody, and then you go and sue them, the judge always asks you for evidence. So the evidence that you had was the conflict between you and that other person that you're suing. So like somebody's not paying their rent and you're suing them for not paying their rent, and then they sign the lease out. Even if it's just referring to contracts, you will still need contract evidence to the judge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how that's addressing this particular thing, though.
No, it's I'm trying to tackle the I think Rosa was saying that it's just contracts and it's nothing to do with the court.
Well, I just showed you when Shafi School scholars explains that this is legal issues. Obviously, I'm hearing just now that you say that you don't believe in this, so I won't pressure you in any way. Okay. I was just want to clarify if Rose, I mean, you don't think that it's legal, so that's why I'm showing you. So if it would be legal, my question is, how would you take that? Would you want that to be implemented if you believe that it was legal issues, Rose?
She might have stepped away there.
Yeah, she can't always answer.
No, I'm here.
Should I repeat my question?
Sure.
So if you were convinced after your research that this is about legal issues, that you need either 2 men for a contract or you need 2 women and 1 man, if that was your conclusion after your research, would you want that implemented in Islamic countries?
Sorry, just give me 1 second. So be mindful that I am at work. So I have a customer right now.
Okay, Rose. Maybe it's better that we let you go for the moment there, and I don't want you to be in any pressure or any trouble at work there. And it's also not a good place for you to think about things, probably.
And also, Takia, the way that you're asking is excellent. But would it make life easier if you said, okay, if it were to be the case, how would you think about this? Because I think what she's saying is she doesn't agree that it should be the case, but then she says she doesn't think this is what it says. But I think it's pretty obvious that it does. So what happens if we change it to what if it did? Would that change it, or would that make it more difficult for you to hold your belief if it did say that you needed 2 men or 4 women instead of that there is a deficiency insinuated in Islam? Would that change something?
Yeah. Can I quickly respond? So I think that the problem is that we've translated the word, intelligence. I think it should be legal obligations there. Why? Because it's referring to a specific thing. It's not saying a woman is deficient in her brain, hence you need 2 women. Rather, it's saying because 2 women are needed in court, hence there's a deficiency in the legal obligations.
That was my question, Rose. My question was, if it was true what I told you, that you need two men in court or 2 women plus 1 man, if that was the case, if that was true after your research, how would you feel about it?
Yeah, but I don't think it's true. I mean, the chapter about 2 women witnesses is dealing with contracts. Unless you can provide me evidence within the Qur'an or the covenants of Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, then you're doing the same thing as others.
Okay, I think we're okay. Cool. So I think, guys, with Rose, it's going to be a bit more of a challenge because she's just outright denying that it says what it clearly says. So I think in that case, there's not going to be anything. Even if we were to say it as you phrased it there, Takia, and stops, I think Rose will just outright reject it because it's in her world, it's impossible because she has reinterpreted this hadith, even though it's fully accepted in the sunnah.com there. She wants to use different words there because presumably that would make it better for her So she's going to outright deny it, even when it stands there, you know, in bold letters. So I'm not sure that we can progress by asking the question. It's a good question, but I don't think she's going to outright deny that.
Okay, Rob, so what is the deficiency in her intelligence? Did they not reply that it was the evidence, you know, is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man?
That's what Muhammad said to them. He said, is not the evidence of two women equal to one man? And they replied in the affirmative. And he said, this is the deficiency in their intelligence. In other words, it takes two women to equal one man. That's what it says there.
In her legal obligations within, you know, I guess the contracts.
You're adding that bit on with great respect, Rose. You're just adding and expanding things. You're trying to mold Islam in your own image. And to be honest,
no, because if you're looking at what caused the deficiency in the intelligence, is it not evidence of? No. So here it is again.
Say, Rose, you do realize that Khadija was a businesswoman and she married her employee. So the employee married the employer. After she died, historically, there isn't any shred of evidence to challenge what I'm about to say, but no woman has ever owned a business in Saudi Arabia post-Muhammad. Pre-Muhammad, women had rights. Post-Muhammad, they didn't. Your narrative doesn't suit or match history.
Okay, can I jump in, please? Can I jump in?
Go ahead. Yeah.
If I may do a last thing, and then I'm gonna leave you guys to speak for a long time. So, Rose, you said I didn't present any evidence. Can you present the Shafi school Sharia law again?
You want me to do that? Sorry.
Yeah. So maybe Rose, she was working with a customer when I showed this. This Shafi school, they coded all Sharia law based on Quran and Hadith. And this is based on the Quran, chapter 2, verse 278, I think. Rose, were you here when I showed this one? Rose? Okay, maybe she has a customer. Okay, I think I'm finished.
Yeah, okay. I think it's very difficult. If Rose is busy there, we're not going to be able to get her full attention on this.
Can I jump in, Mr. Rob?
You can. I think we've got your position. You're quite happy with this. You feel that this is entirely correct.
Yeah, just one remark, I heard many people here talking about when they talk about Islam, they always give the example of Saudi Arabia. And we have to understand that Saudi Arabia has nothing to do with Islam. If Saudi Arabia has something to do with Islam, Saudi Arabia has to do with 5% of Islam, because the biggest Muslim country is Indonesia. It's not Saudi Arabia, okay? If you go to Indonesia, for example, you will see another version of Islam. It is the same Islam, but another version. Why? Because of the difference of culture. So what you are seeing in Saudi Arabia is by the culture effect, not by the Islam effect. Because if you go to the Iran, you will find another version of Islam. Why? It is not because Islam is different. It is because the culture is different. And I think people here in their interventions don't take the culture effect, the culture phenomena, the culture side, and the analyzes. And I think it is a very big mistake. If you go to Germany, for example, you will find some Muslim Germans, they have different culture. If you go to Russia, for example.
Peace, I understand that. I understand that you're claiming they all have different cultures. What we're not looking at the cultures piece. What we are looking at is the texts. And if the text cannot be read and understood clearly, then that's a problem with the text. If the text can be read and understood correctly, then all we need to do is refer to the text. We don't need to look at every single country. And what some of us are suggesting, potentially, in some circumstances, is that Saudi Arabia is reading and implementing the text exactly as it's being presented.
No, not exactly. I will give you some examples. If you go to Saudi Arabia, for example, they have monarchies. It's a monarchy, and the kings do what they ever want to do. If you go to the Quran, for example, you will find one verse talking about the monarchies. And in Islam, we cannot accept monarchies. In real Islam, there is no monarchies. We have shura. Shura, it's like sort of democracy.
Okay, what is real? Yes. What is real Islam? Where do you have real Islam? Where?
Yeah, can you point to somewhere that's got real Islam?
Well,
we can look at it as an example.
I can give you. Yes, the two most close countries to Islam, not 100%, Islam, is Indonesia and Iran. Iran is close to Islam and Indonesia is close to Islam. Now, I think for me, for example, from my own analysis, I think that the Asian countries, the Far East, are the more close people to Islam, more than the Arabs right now.
Do you not think that that's a problem? If the Quran and Islam originated in Saudi Arabia or that area, and they are far away, do you not think that that's a problem? that the original people
I
cannot
think,
implement this correctly according to you. According to them, of course, they can, but according to you, they can't. Do you not think that this is a problem?
No, there is no problem. Why?
No problem. Well, of course not. Sorry. Why would you
Why?
think it's a
It
problem?
is not a problem because yes, please, it is not a problem because what happened in the Middle East are happening by, interventions from other countries. If you let Saudi Arabia do what they want to do, if you let Egypt do what they want to do, if you let Syria do what they want to do, I think we will see more beautiful versions of Islam. But we have political reasons. I think we cannot talk about politics here because we are talking about religion. And this is another mistake, If you want to talk about religion,
Islam has had 1,400 years. Islam has had 1,400 years to try and implement Islam anywhere in the world. It can't even sort out its own back door, Saudi Arabia. And all you're doing is rationalizing and finding excuses. Islam's had 1,400 years, and you can't give one example?
No, sorry. Why I tell you that? Because I think who are the Muslims who are building civilization in Andalusia, in Spain, for example. I think the Europeans were very bad at that moment. So you have to take the history side in your analyze. I will give you one book, you can read it, my dear brother. The History of Civilization.
No, we don't want to know books. No.
Yes.
We don't want to know more books.
So
listen, Samir, Iran is an Islamic republic. Do you agree with that?
What you said?
Is Iran an Islamic republic?
No. I think I told you that the version of Islam in Iran is very close to real Islam. It's very close. And I told you in Indonesia.
I'm asking you a question.
Indonesia.
I'm asking you a question. Is Iran, is that an Islamic republic?
By name, yes. By name, yes. By name.
Okay. Is Indonesia an Islamic republic?
By name, yes.
No, it's not.
Yes, by name, yes. Why not?
Because it's not. It's called Indonesia. It's not the Islamic Republic of Indonesia.
No, I'm talking about. No, I'm not talking about the name. I'm talking about what happened in Indonesia.
I'm talking about the name because you are saying the two are similar. They are totally dissimilar. Indonesia is a secular country. There's only some regions which are more strict with Islam. The others are not.
No, my dear brother, 80% of Indonesians are Muslims. You can verify that.
No, that's bullshit. If you go to Bali, for example, it's totally different.
My dear brother, I told you that 80% from the Indonesian population are Muslims. You can go and verify that. Okay, I give you an information, go verify it. Give me another information.
Okay, when I'm in Indonesia, I don't have people talking about Islam. They are Buddhists.
Yes, no. That's why I told you that Islam and Indonesia are more close to the real Islam. Because in real Islam, we don't care about the faith of other people. Because man sha'a falyu'min, man sha'a falyakfur, whether you believe or not believe. And the history of Muslims show you that. Do you know about the history of Muslims in Andalusia and Spain, for example? They were living with Christians and Jews.
Yes.
Do you know that Jews who were fled from Spain, they go back to the north of Africa because the Muslims in North Africa protect them from the persecution of the Christians in Spain? Yeah, brother, you should read
the history. That's total bullshit.
Let me give another example.
Okay, I've had enough.
This is crazy.
Yep. Let's speak to the ladies instead. I think that's not going to be helpful, and I don't know why we allowed that. We just hear a lot of babble from this guy. So yeah, he's gone. All right, let's move on. I think we've got a fair sized panel here. People have left, and somebody kicked somebody, etc. So let's move on from there. Where were we? Did we? I've still got this up from. I think Takia has dropped out as well, because we were on this verse here. So it seems to me, Jesna, you there? You don't agree with this, i.e., you agree that it's in the Hadith about women being deficient, but you don't agree that it should be implemented today. I think that's my understanding of what you said. Correct?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, that's what
yeah. There you go.
What did you say?
Yeah, sorry. You agree that it's in the. You agree that these verses are in the Hadith about women being defective, but you don't agree that it should be implemented today. Is that fair?
It's not just the Hadith, though. It's the It's in the Quran as well.
Yes. So you don't agree with that, or let me put it this way:
No.
you don't agree that it should be implemented today. You agree that it's there and it says what we believe it says and what you agree it says, but you don't agree that it should be implemented today. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. Good. Okay. The only thing I'd say to you then, Jesna, is on what basis, apart from your personal opinion, are you saying that? Because if it's just your personal opinion, there's nowhere in the Quran or the Hadith, to my understanding, that suggested at some point that this should not be implemented for all time. So I appreciate you don't like it, and that's a good thing, but that seems to be just your opinion, correct?
Yeah, it's just an opinion that I have.
Okay. And if it is just an opinion, and that's different from the Quran, what's your thought on your opinion being different from the Quran?
It's not just that. It's like I said before. It's just sort of the society that you grow up in, and also sort of the culture that you grow up in doesn't really like fit into certain rules. So it's like adding oil into water. It doesn't mix in very well. So the things that go in well, you accept. Things that don't go in as well, you're gonna have to like say, okay, that's what they did, innit?
So do you think then that there should be some sort of reformation or change, or do you think that those verses should be ignored or should be reformed? Or what are your thoughts for a society that you live in?
Well, all the other cultures and religions have done it before.
Yeah, they have to some degree.
Why
correct?
Yeah. Why not us?
Okay, so you would want to, if you could, you would sort of wish to have these verses either removed or reinterpreted or ignored for today's society.
I don't think removing it would be a good idea, though. Like, I think
well, the problem is if it stays there and it doesn't have any basis on which to remove it, then people could always come after you that are maybe a bit more fundamentalist and go, hey, it says it in the Quran. There's nowhere that it's refuted. Let's go back to doing that. So that's the problem. If you were, and Muslims were more like yourself that are more moderate and have, that view of taking it out, fine. But there's always going to be the fundamentalists that can point to the Quran and they will have a stronger claim than you will.
That's true. But with that understanding, it's just the Quran within itself has always been changing. Like the 7th century Quran, we don't have it today. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe
no, I agree, but nowhere in the Quran does it say that. So it takes people like yourself who are quite brave to go, do you know what, I'm going to ignore those verses, or I don't think that's applicable today. And that's quite a brave stance to take, because there's, at least a fair number of
evidence, though. You don't need to like find it in the Quran where it says, like, for example, the Quran that we have today, that's read in masjids, wasn't canonized until 1924 in Egypt.
So just let me just check in with you. Are you the Muslim that does believe that the Quran is a complete, clear, concise, and error-free guide for all humans for all time, or do you think it was specifically for the people of the 7th century?
I think it's yes and no with those 2 points. I think it was for the people of the 7th century, and also it can be applied to the 21st. Like, don't steal. Be faithful, be kind to your neighbor. Do you know what I'm saying? Those kind of laws, we can accept it in the 7th century.
What about eating pork and stuff like that? Can we put that aside? Because, I mean, most people eat pork. There doesn't appear to be any harm from eating pork for those that want to eat it. So could we put that aside as well and allow Muslims to eat pork?
Well, eating pork is not going to cause problems. You know what I'm saying? No, we're not eating it. Do you know what I'm saying? there's the things where they say that, oh, women is half a testimony of a man. That causes problems. Like blowing up arenas with terrorists, that causes problems. But like, laws like, oh, you can't eat pork, and I don't know, like there's certain clothing that men can't wear and all those kind of stuff. Those are sort of, there's things that are worse. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it seems to me
Rob,
that.
can I ask
go ahead, please. Go ahead. Yeah.
I've got just now. What you're saying is very interesting. Are you? Is your approach in general now that men and women should have equal rights.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is not really what is being propagated in the Quran. If I look at Islam as such, then what you are doing is you've got a very brave stand. Are there other things in Islam that you would want to see out of there, like slavery, sex slaves, and things like that? Would that make you more comfortable?
The thing is with like, it's not just slavery and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of even though there's a lot of Muslims that will want to admit it, but we've got like a lot of racism. So me, my heritage is like from Africa. My parents came. So there's a lot of, when it comes to slavery, there's a lot of connections between black people as a whole. So, and also sadly as well, when you go to certain mosques, there's a lot of racism within South Asian and Arab communities, which are blatantly there, despite the fact that a lot of these Muslims don't want to admit it, which annoys me. Go on.
As an ex-Muslim, I can testify to what you're saying. I've seen, after growing up in the Asian community, I've seen, witnessed, heard, and experienced firsthand the racism that takes place in Islam. So yeah, I'm with you on that one, sister. Seeing it with my own eyes, and that was really one.
And that's brilliant.
That's not one reason, but it's one of many reasons as to why I walked away from Islam. I could see the sheer hypocrisy and duplicity. I could go on a 5-minute rant about the racism that I've seen.
Now I want to ask Rose.
Bengalis have their own.
I want to ask Rose the same question.
It starts off with like simple words like they call you Gala. Right, you know what that means, right? And then that's what the Pakistanis call you, and then there's something, then there's Arabs that call you Abi. Which at first you're thinking, well, hang on, what does that mean? And then you actually, like, when you, like, actually I grew up and I realized, hang on, I know what that means. And you're thinking, as small children, where are they getting this words from? They're hearing it from their house. They're hearing it from their parents. And their parents it's funny because their parents were so nice to me, like to my face. And then they would say like some like weird stuff. But then thankfully there's good people like you that tell me, like, no, hang on, my mom told me not to talk to you because you're black.
Oh yeah.
And I'm thinking, how? Why? And they're like, oh, don't talk to them. They're dangerous. They're horrible people. They've got dark skin. Rah 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 rah. And I'm thinking, what have I done? Like, honestly, they think that, oh, it's just white people that have this problem. It's not true.
Actually, I would go as far as say that the Asian culture's contempt for black people is far greater and far more intense than anyone can possibly imagine. With my own experience, for instance, it's not just Pakistanis and blacks, for example. It's Pakistanis and Bengalis and Gujaratis, and how they will splinter. They only unite if there's one mosque in town. But as the community grows, more mosques appear. And what's happening is that the Bengalis are having their own mosque, the Africans will have their own mosque, the Somalians will have their own mosque, and they splinter off in that way. And that's because of the racial prejudice and pressures that are on them. You'll never see a Pakistani woman married to a Somalian man. You'll never see a Pakistani woman, or very rarely, married to a Bengali man. The insults that they have, like the terminologies that they have within themselves for each color and culture, is absolutely disgraceful. But what annoys me most in all of this growing up is that when you look at the Muslim Asian man, particularly the Pakistanis, they will suck up to the black people in all the black community. They will dress black, they will talk black, they will eat black. They will only ever listen to hip hop and R&B. I've only ever met one Pakistani man that ever listened to Oasis. But the one thing they'll never do is allow their black friends, their black Muslim friends, marry any of their Pakistani or Bengali sisters. That will never happen. They merely use it as, and yet white people have more in common with black people than brown people have with black people. and that that is a fact, and history testifies to that, from music to food to culture to a lot of things. However, just go back, but I've seen the racism with my own eyes, and the disgraceful violent acts that have taken place within the Muslim culture against people of color. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, let's bring in Rose now. I think, Rose, you wanted to say something here. Or maybe she's busy. Okay, maybe she's busy there.
Oh, she put a 2. 2
Stop, she keep muting yourself. Leave your thing unmuted, or at least give yourself like a second. She's busy there.
Because she's just put a 1. Yeah, because when I'm on Minicam, it takes a while.
Yeah. Okay, so where to now? I mean, obviously, Jesna's been quite open that she disagrees with certain verses in the Quran, wishes they weren't there, or that we could, put them aside in today's society.
But by implication, if a person is challenging, say, some of the surahs of Hadith, then by implication, are they not Muslim? They're not Muslim anymore. Then you can't pick at Islam, say for instance the Quran, like you're picking at salt out of pepper and picking and choosing what you either believe it or you don't believe it. You can't believe half of it or 3/4 of it and throw the rest away.
That's an interesting question. Absolutely. How do you differentiate? I've asked that question millions of times and nobody has been able to answer this. What makes a Muslim a Muslim? And then people go to, well, if you believe in Islam, well, there is no such thing as the Islam. So, you're stuck, and then you're exactly asking the question that you are asking at the moment.
So you can't pick at it. So you either accept the Quran as the word of God, and if it is the word of God, then you have to subscribe to what your God teaches you, or what your God adheres to. You have no choice. You cannot say, if you're basically saying Allah is the one and the true God, the creator of the universe, oh, I like what he says here, I agree with that. But God's got this wrong, because in effect what you're saying, you're smarter than God because God's got something wrong and you've got something wrong.
Exactly, but this is how it always works. This is what I mean, come on, all gods are bloody stupid. All gods are misogynistic and ridiculously, narcissistic.
Come on,
and then what?
I believe in God. Come on.
Okay, all right. Well, let's let Jesna respond then. Jesna, you've heard some thoughts there. What's your view on that? Jesna, are you there?
I think she's also doing something else from time to time.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so what I'm saying is that everybody takes the little blocks. It's like a Lego, and you put things together the way that you want them, the way that it suits you, and that is then your building. That is the way that you want it done. So you design your own God, you design your own religion, you design your own set of rules that you want to adhere to. If you don't want to pray, you don't pray. Do you know how many Muslims don't fast? How many Muslims, take a sip or take a bite or something, and they say, well, it's only once and then I'll repent and then I'm good to go again? Of course they do.
Stop. Do you remember, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, we had this conversation because you were talking about friends that you have that you call good Muslims, and because you use the term binary, and the point that I was trying to make was that there's no such thing as a good Muslim to a non-Muslim. Muslims can only be good to other
okay, true.
Right? There is no such good thing as a good Muslim. If there is a Muslim who's a good Muslim to a non-Muslim, he's not really a Muslim, but a fake Muslim and a hypocrite.
Actually, you're right. If you're a good person, you're a bad Muslim.
So this is the point. It's almost like another angle to prove that there is no such thing. You're either a Muslim or you're not.
It doesn't work that way. Yeah,
you're either pregnant or you're not. There's no such thing as being half pregnant. You're just pregnant or you're just Muslim. And when you start chipping away, gnawing away, or circumventing, or rationalizing, or trimming down, the very moment you start doing that is when you cease to becoming what you claim to be.
Let me just ask, when Jesna's back, there's a question in the chat there about
Rose is back.
Oh, is Rose back now? Okay, Rose, you've heard what Jesna said there. She disagrees with certain things in the Quran and wouldn't want them implemented today. What's your view on that?
I mean, I think that we have to understand the Quran. That's one. So when it came to that particular chapter about, calling witnesses to be a witness to your agreement with another party, then that doesn't contradict anything when it comes to women's rights, at least. Because you have to look at Islam in a holistic way, right? So men are given rights, but women are also given rights. So did you guys know that women
but Rose, they're not given equal rights. That's the point. They are not given equal rights.
Men and women are different. Women bear children, and
that's not the
still
point.
See this. It is the point, because now you're trying to dismiss something that contributes to that.
Rose, the question. No, Rose. Sorry. The question is, do you think that women and men should have equal rights?
Okay, so there are a number of verses in the Quran which says that men and women are equal when it comes to the reward of their deeds. So
that's women
pray just like that.
That's not my question. I did not ask what the Quran says. I asked you whether you think that men and women should have equal rights.
They can't have equal rights. Why? Because
they can
men
or
and
can't.
Women, they can't. So, for example, women go through different things. They have a completely different life from men. So what you're trying to say is that men and women are biologically the same, hence they need the same rights.
No.
So
that doesn't follow. That's a mistake in your thinking.
Maybe I need to know what you guys think.
I think that a woman should inherit the same as a man. She should be treated in court the same way as a man. If she does the same job as a man, she should get paid the same as a man. That's what I think.
And I agree with you. However, what you're doing is taking a particular chapter from the Quran or verse and saying this means inequality. No, what that particular chapter is saying is it has to do with contracts. So when there's two parties who want to make a contract, they need witnesses, so that contract becomes reliable in the eyes of the law.
Now we've gone past the contract situation now. We're going into the more general topic. We've left that behind because we see that we cannot find any concurrence there. So we've left that behind. We're going into a more general topic now of equal rights in women and men. And there we see the misogyny in the Quran and in Islam in general. This is why I heard what you said, and that is brilliant that you say, no, men and women should have equal rights, but they don't get it according to the Quran. So we need to work on that. And that's it. Brilliant.
Okay, thank you.
What about a woman having 4 husbands, like a man can have 4 wives? And what about the beating of the wife by the husband? Can a wife beat the husband, like the husband can beat the wife?
So here's you guys' problem, right? You're coming with these preconceptions about Islam, right? And then you're trying to force.
Let her finish, Thundress. Let her finish.
You're trying to force your perceptions or your misconceptions onto the faith.
How
Why
so,
don't
Rose?
you open up your mind and open up your heart and come from a just,
How are we doing that, Rose?
First thing I would say is that you sabbih, meaning you remind yourself of God, right? So you understand God first, then you read the Quran. So the first thing is you learn the 99 names of Allah.
They're not names, they're qualities. Mercy isn't a name. Beneficial isn't a name.
What if we ask questions rather than give statements? Because if you say the Quran says it's allowing wife beating, then what you're doing is you're provoking a discussion on whether it says that. So I would prefer if we just ask questions. So, do you think it's okay for a man to have 4 women and for a woman to have 4 husbands?
What I would suggest that you do, stop spamming, is go to that particular chapter and get all the relevant other chapters that would, actually go to it now. Can you, Rob? So maybe
the question is, do you think a woman should have more husbands?
It's not about what I think. It's about what Allah has said in His book. Okay, so let's go to that particular thing and see if we can come up with a consensus on what it means. That particular. Can you do that, Rob?
Which verse are you looking for?
4:3. But this says that, I mean, it's actually gibberish if you really look at this. But the thing is, it seems to indicate that a man can have 4 or 9 or whatever wives. The question is if this should be reversed or not.
So here's the verse. I shall read it for you. Yusuf Ali translation, Surah 4, verse 3. If ye fear that ye shall not be able to deal justly with the orphans, marry women of your choice, 2, 3, or 4. But if ye fear ye shall not be able to deal justly with them, then only one, or a captive that your right hand possesses, that will be more suitable to prevent you from doing injustice.
Okay, so stop spamming. What do you understand from that particular verse?
I don't understand it, because this is, in my eyes, total gibberish, because it talks about orphans, and then it talks about women that you should marry, and then it says 2 and 3 and 4, which it says here or, which is wrong. But then it says, if ye fear that you shall not, then 1, because it will be suitable to prevent you from doing injustice. So none of this makes any sense.
Okay, so the first thing we understand, it's conditional, right? So now there's another chapter in the Quran which says, and ye will never be able to be just.
Okay.
So more than one. So again, so if the Quran telling you can have up to 4 wives, and I'm posing this to you now. Like you're gonna have to use your reasoning and your logic. That's one.
Go for it.
Conditional and
no, I agree with her. She's right. No, Rose, you're absolutely right. The Quran definitely says you will not be able to do so. So by all rights, a man should only have 1 wife. Absolutely correct. I agree with you.
Okay, so can we pull that other chapter up? So if you understand the Quran, right? God's words and speech, you will have no problem. But the thing is, if you're coming with misconceptions and you think that whatever people have said about Islam is the truth, etc., then you're going to come with a biased lens. So when you are reading the Quran, you're not even going to investigate it.
Okay, so are you saying that the Quran says you should only have 1 wife?
Do you think it says otherwise?
No,
so
I'm asking you.
No, don't ask me, because we can all use our reason and logic and come to the consensus of what God is telling us.
Okay.
If you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly, so if that's condition, it means that is conditional. That's a conditional statement. So unless you can prove that you don't fear dealing unjustly with women, then I don't like, honestly, I don't think any man will not have this fear.
So why would a God say you're allowed to marry 9 women, but you won't be able to do that? You can only have 1.
Right. So in another chapter, it tells the men, and ye will never be able to be just.
Yes, we just had this. Here, this is on the screen now.
Sorry, wrong one, maybe? This one?
This is, you will never be able to deal justly, so marry only 1. So why would a God say in a different sentence, you should marry 4 or 9 or whatever, how many wives? Why would a God do that, do you think?
Well, it's because, in those times, men had multiple wives. This was a common...
This is not, so the Quran is not valid today?
What are you saying?
I'm asking you, because you are saying in those days. So the question I'm asking immediately is, do you think that the Quran is only valid in some portions for those days, or is the entire Quran valid for all times, like for now?
For all times. So if we try to put it into the modern context, people no longer marry, so they have multiple girlfriends.
Okay.
Can they deal with them? So the thing is, when if you're gonna try to view it through multiple lenses, you're gonna have to translate certain words for other words. So girlfriends today are like wives back then. Men can marry. Men can only be married to women in Islam. Can't have a girlfriend.
Okay,
But
so if we go away from the girlfriends, if we go away from the wives, there are sentences in the Quran which are definitely talking about the difference between the treatment of men and women. Like in chapter 4, you will see 100% in sentence number 11 and in sentence number 176 that women are supposed to inherit less than men. Do you agree with that?
Rose, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So
here it is. This is 4:11 and 4:12. Allah directs you as regards your children's inheritance to the male a portion equal to that of 2 females. If daughters 2 or more, their share or 2/3.
Okay, but this is 2 to 1. I mean, this is very clear, don't you think?
There it is.
And you have the same in 176.
So I think it's fairly clear there. Let's just see if we see it here. In what your wife leaves, your share is a half. I think this one is clear enough here. We don't even need anything else, really. What's your view on that, Rose? That's Quran 4:11.
I think it's pretty fair, especially considering that
is it fair today? Is it fair today, Rose?
No, let's just establish, is this really true? Does the Quran really say 2 to 1? Is that correct?
Okay, so Allah directs you regards your children's inheritance to the male a portion equal to that of 2 females. So what is the portion of 2 females?
It doesn't matter. It's always double. Is that what we understand from this?
Okay, so men are guardians. When I say guardians, they provide for the woman, they sustain the woman.
Rose, we're not there.
No, that's not the question. The question, I'm first trying to establish whether we are looking at the same thing and we understand the same thing from the words that we see there.
Yeah, we're not talking about whether they're guardians at this moment. We just want to establish whether you agree that this verse clearly states that a male gets a portion equal to 2 females. In other words, double 1 female.
Yeah, I read it. I'm reading it with you.
Okay, so yeah, we can talk about the justifications you believe about that afterwards. We just want to establish that you agree with what we are saying.
Mm-hmm.
So just let us know if once you've read it and whether you agree that in fact it does say to a male a portion equal to 2 females. In other words, double 1 female.
Okay, so a woman gets their share is 2/3 of the. Well,
no, just to top it, right?
No, it doesn't matter how much. It's always double. If there's a man and a woman, the man always gets double what the woman gets. Or if there's 2 women, they get the same as 1 man. So it's always half.
Okay, so if you understand the way Islam works, then this would not appear as a.
Yeah, we understand that you want to talk about that.
We're doing step by step.
Here's the thing. Agree? When a woman gets married, and women are to be, getting married is 50% of our way of life. So getting married is something important in Islam. So that's one. And when a woman is married, she goes with her husband. So in a way, this kind of makes sense.
Rose, this is not the question.
I said I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you see it, but you've seen other things, but then you understand something different. So I'm trying to take it step by step to make sure that we are talking about the very, very same identical thing. I'm just trying to be fair to you that I'm not jumping to anything. I don't have a preconceived idea. I don't have anything. I'm looking at the words here and I understand that the man gets double what the woman gets. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. If you said that the Quran is valid for today, if I have a woman today who is a single mother, she has to raise 2 kids, and the husband has his own business, is pretty well off, has another girlfriend, doesn't have any other obligations. Now, the father of both of them, or somebody dies and they inherit, and the man who is well off and doesn't have obligations gets double as the woman gets, who has the obligation of raising 2 kids, and she's a single mother and has to go and work and cater for herself and the children. Is that fair according to the Quran?
Okay, so now you're providing an example, like you're extending to absurdity, right? Because that's not, that particular chapter is now dealing with inheritance rights.
Correct.
Because the male, you know, the male is the head of the household. That's one.
No, I said this woman is single.
So when it comes to the redistribution of wealth that the parents have earned over the years, and the male is the one who leads that.
No, she's single.
Okay, but you're talking about a daughter now, a daughter who is supposedly married, then divorced. So even within Islam, so if the woman gets divorced, you know, by the stipulation of her contract alone, a man is to what? He still has to sustain her. That's his right, especially if he has a child with her. So, and even a lot of women do this today. So they, in their marriage contract, they'll say if there is a divorce, then the man will have to pay the money. He'll have to pay money. So this is her protection. This is all, you know, like dowry, for example. Some women may reject it up front and keep it in case of a problem in the future.
And if they don't?
Well, the man is going to be responsible.
What if he's not?
He has to be. That's his, you know, that's his duty and obligation.
Rose, no. That's not the way that it works. I'm trying to ask you, according to the situation that I have created, is Islam fair to the woman, yes or no? And you are saying, well, yes, if this and this. You're adding other attributes, you're adding other conditions. I'm saying if she's really single, the man has left, he's gone back to Indonesia or to Morocco or something, she is alone, and then what?
Okay, so here's the thing, right? So woman gets to inherit property from her parents, then she gets a dowry from her husband, which is like the bridal gift. Then on top of that, you know, she has rights over the children. Further, you know, if anything should happen, he must pay the money and let her go with a good release, which is in the Quran. So the woman is protected from every aspect. What you're doing is trying to say, oh, look, they can only inherit 2 parts. No, because the woman has other rights that men don't have.
I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about a specific case, and this is inheritance.
Right. So you said if the, you know, the woman, you know, is now single, but before that she has to have been married, and in the marriage contract she's, you know, she has a dowry.
Rose, okay, do you really think this is fair? Do you think Islam is fair to women?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't think there's much more there that we can say. I think the comments are saying quite a bit there that we don't have to say here. Good. Thunderous, is there anything you want to add?
To be honest with you, no. I think we're all thinking the same thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's not a lot else we can say there. I just want to see here if there's any. Is there any other questions coming in?
Here's what I'll pose to you guys, right? So I want you to think about the conditions, you know, that the Qur'an came down in. So, you know, we're living in a modern era where these, you know, women don't have to work in the same way as they did back then. However, if you just, you know, travel to the Middle East, you'll see the way that men and women still live. So there's a huge division between the roles. And in that context, Islam is perfect. It's beautiful. And, you know, especially for the fact that, you know, women still have to take, you know, wood in order to start fires, because there's no gas systems, there's no electricity in that way. So everything is quite different. So I understand where you guys are coming from, like from this worldview, and then, you know, trying to say that world.
Rose, you don't.
Yes, I do. And then I also understand why you're coming with, can I finish? Why you're coming with these questions about the faith itself. And I will also tell the viewers this, that if you think that, you know, what they're saying Islam is unfair, I would just point you to the United Arab Emirates, where women are more, you know, are represented politically within parliament more than the USA. And they have more positions of power. So they are given positions of power to make decisions that
Rose, pointing to that contradicts the Quran. So that country is going against the Quran. So I wouldn't use that as an example to follow, would you?
Of course I would, because it doesn't contradict the Quran. So what the Quran addresses is familial relations. The Quran, it deals one with the individual, then two with the family, which make up the society.
Actually, I think
so the Quran does not say women are not allowed positions of power, which is why the United Arab Emirates have more women in power. Places like Dubai, like women are in CEO positions. Women are like elevated beyond what you guys think.
Yeah, the problem is,
why do you think you're telling me I should go and travel to the Middle East or to the UAE?
Well, for one, right, if you go to a poverty enriched nation within the Middle East, you'll see those, division of roles, in front of your eyes. And this is like the jobs we have today are different because of our advancements in technology, our advancements in electricity and gas and all these systems. But in some nations in the Middle East, they don't have these advancements. So of course you see the woman with her traditional role. However,
you're living in a dream world, Rose. I'm sorry to have to tell you this.
Well, it's because you're failing to see the bigger picture, and that's your problem. Stop spamming.
No.
You're failing, and I really recommend that you open up your eyes.
You have no clue what you are saying. Why do you think I'm constantly talking about the Middle East? Why do you think I'm constantly talking about Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, and why do you think I'm talking about those places all the time? That's where I live.
Okay, so the Muslims here in the USA or the United Kingdom or in the West, how are they living their lives?
They are totally different. The Muslims in the UK are more fundamentalist than the Muslims in Qatar.
Are you talking about the Muslims that are in prison, or are you talking about the Muslim sex gangs, or are you talking about the Muslims that are in political areas, or are you talking about those that are constantly on TV being proactively offended by truth coming out from people who are like ex-Muslims and people who have actually read the Quran and the Hadith for themselves? Which Muslims are you talking about?
Okay, so we have people who claim to be Muslims, right? Whether it's in the US or the UK or in other parts of the world, who are both believers in Allah, in the last day, in all of this, and are still progressive members of society.
How can you be a progressive member of society when the Quran is quite clear that do not take Jews and Christians as your friends? They're friends of each other. Whoever takes a Jew and a Christian as a friend is a hypocrite in the eyes of Allah.
See, that's another misconception that you have, because
misconception. Here we go. It seems that every time somebody brings out hadith or a surah that is challenging your what your Allah says or what your prophet says, it's a misconception. If I bring out the fact that, please give me the dignity of finishing. If I bring out that Muhammad at the age of 54 had sex with a 9-year-old girl, Aisha, you'll be telling me that I got that wrong as well, even though that's a historical fact. And you'll then try and tell me that it was normal for Saudi Arabian men to marry 6-year-old girls and have sex with a 9 because that was the culture back then, or she was very mature, or maybe you'll tell me it's a scientific fact that in Saudi Arabia it's very warm, so 6-year-old girls and 9-year-old girls mature very quickly. Which one of those are you going to use as your default when you're trying to tell me about Muhammad and my understanding then, or have I got that wrong too?
You've definitely got that wrong. So here's and I told you your problem many times, and I hope that you hear me this time. Please listen. You're coming with misconceptions without, studying, investigating.
I am an ex-Muslim. I have studied. Here's an example, right? Here's an example of what I know and you don't, right? Okay. Tell me where, what location on earth is where Dhul Qarnayn's great copper-covered iron wall is located? Now, you should know, it's chapter 18. He went to a place to keep two tribes apart, Gog and Magog, and some other tribe. He built a copper-covered iron wall between two mountains. It is the greatest industrial event in human history. No architecture has been like it prior or since. Where is the location of this copper-covered iron wall?
Well, I'm not sure about that right now, but let me...
Well, how could you be? It should be the greatest event in the history of mankind. There is no other place on earth like it. It is the greatest architectural event in the history of building. It will dwarf the pyramids. It will be it'll be the greatest wonder of the world, and you don't know anything about it, yet it's in chapter 18 of the Quran.
Yeah, but now you're going to a different topic. Let her finish with the women first. Thunders.
Yeah, she can always do it. She can always do a Google search and come back to us on that, Thunders. Perhaps we've
no. We were talking about my misconceptions and what I do and don't know.
Yeah, but it's not just about Thunders.
Every time I point to raise, the misconceptions and misconceptions.
Thunderous, it's the same for all of us, by the way. It's the same for you, me, and Stops. Not just you. We are all misinformed, and Rose is trying to inform us.
Yeah, so
we all have it wrong. Go ahead, Rose.
So my advice, and I hope you guys take it, is you want to understand who Allah is. So Allah would never oppress a person in any way, form, or whatsoever. He is the just, the wise, the kind, and merciful. But let me address your points really quickly.
I was just wondering if he didn't oppress the Jews and Jews that he turned to apes and pigs for not obeying the Sabbath.
No. So let me address your points first, okay? So, sorry, 1 second. How are you?
Okay, I'm going to mute.
Thunders, we need to, give us 60 seconds to just say this, because I was very interested to hear how she was going to justify this, really, because it's so.
Forgive me. I had a rush of blood.
I understand. Yeah. Fine.
My belligerence. Forgive me. I didn't mean to go on.
That's okay. I mean, I think we are all misinformed, and it's interesting to listen to different points of view, and I think that's useful. Jesna's got a point that I think actually all of us far more agree with, whereas Rose always comes from the point that we just don't understand this. And if we looked at it with an open heart and we understood Allah better, and we looked at verses and we found verses in different parts of the Quran and we put them all together, it would just all make sense. So it's all of us that are always misinformed. And as long as we understand that that's going to be the standard response, then, we can just, hopefully, and I know you got a little bit emotional there, we can just put the emotion aside. We know what the response is going to be. And this is not to change her mind. This is really to send it out to the world to hear what different responses are out there. But we are always the ones that don't understand. And by the way, it's not just us. It's the scholars and it's many other people as well that Rose is not aware of or that disagree with Rose. They're also presumably misinformed as well. And by the way, so is every Muslim country, because they don't implement Islam the way Rose would. So virtually everybody's misinformed, I think.
So the first point that you made, Thunder Bolts, is that there's about the Hadith. However, if you took your time and investigated, you would find that Hadith contradicts the mission of the Prophet, which is the chronology of the time of events that happened. So if you take a look at the evidence, she could not have been 19. In fact, it goes contrary to evidence, to facts, which everyone should appeal to when studying anything. So the fact is, she was not 9, rather she was 19. Another point, and I wanted to...
By the way, Rose, I brought this up as well. Rose and I spoke about this earlier today, and I did point out that people like Muhammad Hijab, who people think is quite a scholar, and many other people actually accept this. So what would be interesting is for Rose to bring her evidence versus Muhammad Hijab and many other Muslims and scholars who do defend those verses. And we can sit back and look at this and ask the question, who is bringing the more reliable sources here? Because there are clearly many, many Muslims that disagree with Rose. But what we haven't heard from Rose is any evidence to suggest that her position is right.
I just stated the evidence. The age of 9 would contradict the chronology of the mission of the Prophet. So you can actually Google this and you will find the evidence yourself. So, I can't, guide every single person who has a misconception. However, I can give them advice to investigate everything.
But that
this is the word of God. This is the word of God. It's not just a random person saying things to you.
Okay, but so Rose, I could say the same to you, and so could Muhammad Hijab. Rose, all you need to do is go and Google this, and you will see that there's many sources, and there's a great deal of evidence that, in fact, that hadith was true. And we can't make you do it ourselves. But if you're open to it, and you just go and Google it, you will change your mind and see that hadith is in fact true. See, I've done exactly the same as you.
No, you haven't, because what you're doing is suggesting
the same thing as you.
Let me tell you what you're doing, right? So the evidence is there, right? The facts are there. The facts will speak for themselves. So what I'm saying is, let's go to where the facts take us, and the facts have taken us to the truth. The truth is she was 19. This is a hadith, and the hadith is contradicting evidence.
No, that's wrong.
No.
You need to understand how this works. Okay, number one, you have hadiths which are classified as sahih. So what you are doing is you're throwing out 1,000 years of scholarship at the moment, where these are classified according to Islamic scholars as sahih. Okay, and they say very, very clearly that she was 6 years old when she got married and 9 years old when she was, when she had sex. So this is very, very clear in the hadith, classified as sahih. Now, what happens is people like you are uncomfortable with this because you realize that it makes your prophet look like really bad. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get away with it. So what happens now is you have a narrative that she has a sister who was born at a specific time, which would seem to make her 10 years older than her. Then what you have is you have the narrative that there was a battle, and because the people younger than 15 were not allowed on the battlefield, this must have meant that Aisha was over 15. And because the sister was 10 years older and she got married when she was 28, this must have meant that Aisha then was over the age of 15 and was 18. And that is how you reason it. There is no hadith that says that Aisha was at a specific age of 18, 17, 16, 19 or anything. This is all just going and looking at the indications and piecing them together. And the two hadiths which do go and sort of insinuate this are not classified as hadith, as sahih. So what you are doing is you're taking the accepted scholarship of 1,000 years, throwing it away and saying, I'm taking the fuzzy logic that I'm getting from somewhere else because it is more comfortable, because you as a person are better than your God.
No, stops. It's called logical reasoning. And logical reasoning, you can deduce certain things based off the logic. And I think Rob would agree with this, that we have to use our reason. Yes, we do. So if reasoning provided the evidence or the facts of missions, of times of going to war, etc., lead us or point us to a certain direction where we must practice our logical faculty, then yes. So what are you saying? It's not a matter of being ashamed. It's not a matter of that.
Okay, what about...
But what if Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old? What would that do for you?
That wouldn't necessarily mean anything. The Prophet, the messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, has fulfilled his mission, and now the rest is up to us. This is our generation. And if you wish to sit here and marginalize Muslims, that's your decision. However, be mindful that one day you will be held accountable for this.
Okay, so if Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old, he would still be a prophet and he would still be a role model for you today.
There you go. That's it. I shouldn't have called him, man.
But by implication, then every Muslim, 1.5 billion Muslims on planet Earth, are basically saying we support 54-year-old men having sex with 9-year-old girls because that's the role model that we follow. So, in effect, by implication and communal responsibility, Muslims, by declaring themselves Muslim and identifying Muhammad as their prophet and role model, are basically supporters of child rape. There is no other conclusion you can draw other than that.
Yeah, but this is why they're shying away from this now. This is why there's a lot of
I know the absolutely desperate rationalization that takes place because of the cognitive dissonance.
Yes, exactly.
The implication of it. But the fact of the matter is, this is the argument I have with my family over and again when they read about paedophile activity in the Catholic Church, and I just turn around and say to them, well, you by implication support child rape because you're a Muslim and your prophet did exactly this. There is no way a 9-year-old girl was a mature, intellectual, whatever, to be able to consent as to what was taking place. But a 54-year-old penis that had been inside other women, grown women, was now penetrating a 9-year-old girl, and you're expecting me to say that that's normal and holy and godly. After all, this man was chosen by a God. You are supporters of child rape. There is no other implication you can draw from that, or conclusion you can draw from that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people, and Rose is one of them, who are saying, well, this is not in line with the character of Muhammad. They don't, the problem is that 99% of Muslims today have not read the entire Hadith, have not read all the atrocities that Muhammad committed. They don't know about this. They think that this was a great man. They think that he was of high moral standards. They don't know about this stuff.
But this goes back to what we said days, weeks, months, and years ago. When you talk to a Muslim, you have to tell him what they believe because they don't know what they believe. Then you have to tell them what you believe because they don't know what you believe either. So you stand there having a double conversation, one telling them what they believe, and then second telling them what you believe.
But then the problem is they think they know these things. Like she said, there is a hadith which says that she was 19. No, there is no hadith that does this. It's reasoning.
I think because it's Christmas and New Year, she's been drinking too much camel urine.
Okay, guys, you can mock and laugh all you want. However, the evidence is, in
there
front of your eyes. Whether you
let me finish. There is no evidence. You're lying. There is no evidence.
You're choosing to shy away from the evidence because you want to keep.
What evidence is there? Can you cite me some evidence? Can you show me some evidence?
Stop spamming. Just gave you the evidence.
He didn't give me no evidence.
He did, but you weren't listening. That's your problem.
Aisha was 19 years old. He's not said that. He's disagreed with it totally. He does not accept that Aisha was 19-year-old when Muhammad penetrated her before.
I repeated the fallacious arguing chain.
It's not a fallacious. It's because you're choosing to throw away evidence when it comes to you.
Why should I do that? I don't have any cards in this. I don't care. I don't care. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the situation the way that it is, and I'm very happy that people like you have the morality to say, no, going and having sex with a 9-year-old is wrong. And that's good.
So do you accept the evidence that was provided to you in that reasoning, the logical reasoning that was that took place, provided the other hadiths, that suggest that she was 19? Do you accept the evidence?
Rose,
when it's
no, to tell you the truth, I don't think there's any evidence that Muhammad even existed. So I'm talking from the perspective of a fairy tale. I'm not talking in reality.
Okay, so again, I'm going to ask you again, stop spamming. When evidence comes to you, do you accept it or you brush it away? Simple. Yes,
no, I take the evidence, absolutely. But if I have several hadiths classified as hadith, and I look at what Muslims believe, okay, this is for me is more important. If I look at the way that they are written, I just laugh about them. I don't believe either. But I look at what Muslims believe, and they tell me that they need the hadiths to fully understand Islam, because the 99 names of Allah are not in the Quran at all. So you have to have the hadiths to find out how to pray, how to perform the Hajj, how to do all these things. And if then you are saying, I believe what the hadiths tell me, yeah, but hang on, no, I don't believe this one, because now it's getting against my own morality. You are picking and choosing. And this is what the whole topic of today has been. How can you be a Muslim What kind of a Muslim are you? What kind of an Islam are you believing if you are constructing it yourself? And that is exactly what you are doing. That's all that we're trying to show here. And I'm trying to show somebody like you that what you are doing as a human being is much better than what the people did 1,000 years ago, or what fundamentalists do today, who are saying, somebody like Adnan Rashid, who says that all the hadiths which are classified as Sahih in Bukhari and in Muslim are 100% authentic. And he is somebody who says, yes, Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old and it's okay because he did it. He was entitled to have 9 wives or 12 wives, and he was entitled to have sex with a little girl because he was the prophet. So I prefer your attitude much, much more than that of the fundamentalists who want to stick to those hadiths.
It stops in the problem that those fundamentalists seem to have reasonably good reasons for believing that. They're not, in their own mind at least, not believing it just on flimsy evidence according to them.
Well, it is flimsy. It's just that, you know, they're piecing it together. So at the end of the day, somebody like Rose will then say, yes, there are hadiths who are saying this. No, they are not. You need to piece it together step by step by step. So you need to take little bits and pieces here and there just to make your point. And there I'm taking Occam's razor and I'm saying, yeah, but hang on, it's very clear. She was playing with dolls. She was on a swing. And these indications tell me that the other hadiths make much more sense. That's it. So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm not right or wrong or anything. I have no bet. I have no money on this. There's no horse in this race.
All right. I think with that, we'll go to an after show for those who want to. There's some people in the chat that wants to do an after show as well. Stops, have we got a hadith that we can bring it to a close for this evening? And
okay, give me a sec.
Yes, sure. And wishing everybody here a great new year. We'll see you again in the new year, in the first Friday. So that'll be next week, which would be let me just check the date here. What have we got here? That'll be the 4th of January. Friday, the 4th of January. We'll be back in the first Friday of 2019. So for all of you, wishing you a great end of the year. And let's hope all your hopes and dreams are good for the 2019. And we'll continue the conversation, continue the show. And hopefully we'll add something, especially what I'm really looking for next year is a couple of Muslims like Rose or others that want to come on regularly. And what I think we want to do is stick to one topic, and we want to dig into it a little bit more deeply, because if we jump around on 15 different topics, we only scratch the surface. So we want to do one. We can, bring in Thunderous and Stops and maybe Takia Watch, and then Rose can invite one or two of her friends that we can really dig into and have a look at it. And I think that might be quite revealing for everybody, because if we are going to look into this more deeply, then I think a deep dive is going to be more interesting. And if we keep on one topic, and I will make sure that we stay on that topic and we don't bring up 15 other things.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. And you should have kicked me because I forgot the goodie of the day.
Yes. We started off slightly differently, didn't we?
Because I have here an Iranian political activist who died. Well, I can do this next year.
Yeah, let's do it for the start of next year. We're bringing
the goodie. Okay, then I will give you very, very quick, 2 short hadiths. The first one is from Bukhari 346, and it's number 695, and it's narrated by Asma bint Abu Bakr. The Prophet ordered us to free slaves at the time of solar eclipses. And the second hadith is not number 695, but number 696. And guess what? It's also narrated by Asma bint Abu Bakr. We were ordered to free slaves at the time of lunar eclipses. So it's solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. So these were very special things, and you had to suffer financially by freeing a slave. That was the Sahih of the day.
Great. And with that, I want to thank Stops. I want to thank Rose, Thunderous, and all the other guests that were on the show as well. Thank you all very much. We will see you again in the new year. Have a great new year. We will go to an after show. I have posted the link in the chat. I'll post it again, and we will see you then. Thank you so much.